Pokémon, the strongest trainer. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction, so don't try any techniques you hear here in real life. Your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 101 Strange Meteorites, the Legendary Atlantis. A strangely shaped stone appeared before Feng. He gazed at it, carefully sensing it with his wave power, a thoughtful expression on his face. Through his wave power, he could sense that the stone before him seemed to harbor some kind of life force, which brought a certain puzzlement to his face. Then, Feng turned to Feng and asked with a hint of doubt, "Chairman Wu, what's the matter with this stone?" Feng followed his finger and slowly looked over. Seeing the strange stone, a vague impression emerged. After racking his brains, he finally remembered the stone's origins. With a slight frown, he said, "This stone was unearthed in Puiyang, Yazhou. Experts say it dates back to the Qin dynasty, and this is no ordinary stone, but a massive meteorite." Meteorite? Feng glanced at the stone in surprise, unable to resist muttering. In the 36th year, Mars was in the heart. A star fell to the east of the capital, and when it reached the ground, it formed a stone. Some people carved on the stone the words, "When the first emperor dies, the land will be divided." Upon hearing this, the first emperor sent imperial censors to investigate, but none of them admitted to the truth. He then executed everyone living near the stone. After a long moment, Feng seemed to recall something and hurriedly asked Feng, "Could this be the meteorite that fell from the sky in the 36th year of the first emperor's reign?" Upon hearing Feng's question, Feng's face showed surprise. He hadn't expected Feng's extensive knowledge to connect the dots so quickly. He then nodded to Feng, confirming his statement. After Feng's confirmation, Feng gradually formed a certain suspicion, and his gaze towards the meteorite deepened. After a brief moment of deliberation, Feng made a decision and addressed Feng, "President Wu, I'll choose this meteorite and the 2 gem fragments." Feng listened to his words with a look of astonishment on his face. He couldn't help but ask Feng, "Are you sure you want these 3 items? You won't look at anything else?" A faint smile crossed Feng's face, and he said casually, "President Wu, I'll just take these 3 items." Feng looked at the determined expression on Feng's face and couldn't help but shake his head, sighing softly. He didn't know why Feng insisted on choosing these seemingly worthless items, but he had no choice but to go along with his choice and let him take the 3 items. After a long moment, Feng seemed to recall something and quickly asked Feng, "Feng, in a while, a new secret realm in the Atlantic Ocean will open. Would you like to go and see it?" Curiosity crossed Feng's face as he listened, and he pleaded, "Chairman Wu, what do you mean by the Atlantic Secret Realm?" Feng gazed at Feng, his face filled with confusion, paused briefly, and then slowly began to explain. Feng listened quietly, his expression shifting from moment to moment. Through Feng's explanation, Feng finally grasped some of the relevant information. With the intensification of world integration, ancient, deeply hidden secret realms have gradually emerged on Blue Planet, and this Atlantic Secret Realm is one of them. According to research conducted by various nations, this Atlantic Secret Realm actually has another name, Atlantis. Upon hearing this name, Feng couldn't help but express shock. If Feng was right, these mythical secret realms might once have been connected to legendary Pokémon. Upon thinking this, he hurriedly asked Feng, "President Wu, are there any restrictions for entering the Atlantic Secret Realm?" Feng knew full well that if there were no restrictions on entry, Feng would never have specifically reminded him. Feng was silent for a moment before replying in a deep voice, "The Atlantic Secret Realm has been sealed off by various nations. Entry is only possible through a quota. In order to cultivate strong trainers, the Elders Council has decided to delegate the quota to a great Xia nation. The qualified candidates will be determined through a competition based on their strength. I expect quite a few trainers will compete. If you're interested, come find me at the Pokémon League in 3 days." Naturally, Feng wouldn't give up on a place that might be connected to legendary Pokémon. He pondered for a moment, nodded to Feng, explained his intentions, and departed. Wu Feng's news forced Lu Feng to change his plans and stay in the imperial capital for the time being. He first booked a beautiful hotel through a tour group and then slowly walked towards his reserved hotel. After arriving at the hotel, Lu Feng took out the 3 items he had just acquired and released several of his Pokémon. Eevee, freed from its Pokéball, ran directly to Lu Feng's side, rubbing its fur and pink paw pads against his trouser legs. Lu Feng looked at the Eevee with a smile on his face, and silently picked it up. Swampert, suddenly, Swampert's face lit up with eagerness upon seeing the 2 gem fragments in Lu Feng's hand, becoming a little restless. It could clearly sense that these 2 gem fragments would be of great help to it. Perhaps the opportunity to comprehend the origin wave and the cliff sword lay in these 2 gem fragments. Lu Feng chuckled softly, then handed the 2 gem fragments to Swampert, muttering with a hopeful look, "Swampert, don't let me down, Swampert." Swampert looked at Lu Feng solemnly and growled. After receiving the 2 gem fragments, Swampert entered a state of contemplation, silently sensing the vibrations of the 2 gems. As if due to their shared properties, the 2 gem fragments began to radiate, resonating with Swampert. The power within the 2 gem fragments penetrated Swampert directly, and the symbols Greek letter Omega and Greek letter Alpha appeared faintly on Swampert's body, its aura slowly growing. Then, Lu Feng turned his gaze to the meteorite, silently examining it for a long moment. "I hope it's as I expected," he whispered, his eyes flickering slightly. Lu Feng looked at Bangula and gave it the corresponding command, "Bangula, bite this meteorite." Bangula roared, silently raised the meteorite in front of him, and used the bite technique. Under Bangula's incredible bite force, the meteorite, which had existed for ages, was slowly disintegrated. After a while, a strange object fell from the meteorite. It was a green crystal, seemingly unremarkable, like any other crystal. But Lu Feng could clearly sense the life force within it. Though faint, it was undoubtedly alive. He gazed at the green crystal object, lost in thought, muttering softly, "As I expected, the life force within this meteorite truly comes from Deoxys." Lu Feng had previously detected the life force through waveguide power during his time in the Great Xia Elf Alliance, and this suspicion had formed in his mind. After all, in the elven world, life from outer space is rare. Only life mutated from cosmic virus DNA could survive for so long within this meteorite. After a brief moment of reflection, Lu Feng channeled his viridian power towards the green crystal. With its help, the energy within the crystal slowly recovered. While still somewhat weak, it was significantly better than before. A slight ripple emanated from the green crystal, as if thanking Lu Feng for his help. Lu Feng looked at the green crystal before him, shook his head slightly, and then carefully put it away. Currently, there was nothing on Blue Planet that could help Deoxys recover. If this severely injured Deoxys was to be healed, they would have to travel to the Hoenn region of the spirit world. Only with the help of a machine similar to that described in the original storyline could the Deoxys in Lu Feng's hands be healed. With this thought, Lu Feng silently wrote this into his future plans. Chapter 102, The Trials Begin. Pokémon with their own style appear. 3 days later, the sun rose early in the morning, filtering through the azure curtains and shining directly into the hotel, landing squarely on Lu Feng. As if sensing the warmth, he slowly awoke from his slumber. Watching the golden sun fall on Eevee, its short legs restlessly twitching, a smile crossed Lu Feng's face. After washing up, Lu Feng prepared the energy cubes for several Pokémon. As if sensing a unique scent, the sleeping Eevee scrambled to its feet, bleary-eyed, and called out sweetly to Lu Feng, "Eevee." Hearing Eevee's voice, Lu Feng turned to its location, retrieved 2 bottles of Moonlu milk, and fed them directly to it. After a simple breakfast, Lu Feng and Eevee left the hotel, slowly walking towards the Great Xia Kingdom Pokémon League. With the advancement of Pokéball technology, the number of trainers in Daxia gradually increased, and the streets were a common sight for trainers traveling with their Pokémon. In just a few months, Pokémon had become deeply ingrained in Daxia, becoming an integral part of people's lives. Because of Eevee's adorable appearance, young women frequently glanced at Lu Feng as he made his way along, some even trying to tease him. Seeing this, Lu Feng couldn't help but ponder. Looking at the seemingly hopeless Eevee, he whispered, "No wonder it's a Pokémon meant for tough guys. So that's how it is, Eevee." Eevee, listening to Lu Feng's words, gave a puzzled look, then suddenly darted back into its Pokéball, refusing to come out. Lu Feng watched the fleeing Eevee, his lips twitching slightly, and he shook his head in frustration. Not long after, Lu Feng finally arrived at the Daxia Pokemon Alliance headquarters. However, the Pokemon League today was significantly more popular than when Lu Feng first arrived 3 days ago, with a significant increase in the number of trainers. Looking at these trainers, dressed in various attire and with determined faces, Lu Feng suddenly understood. These were undoubtedly the trainers from the Great Xia Nation who had come to compete for admission to the Atlantic Secret Realm. Lu Feng carefully counted the number of trainers present and found that there were around 3,000. He couldn't help but mutter, "It seems the competition is quite fierce this time." After all, the trainers who made it here were quite confident in their abilities. Lu Feng and the others waited silently in the open space outside the Pokemon League. While waiting, Lu Feng once again released his Eevee, constantly teasing it to pass the time. After waiting for half an hour, the group, led by the official staff, arrived at a newly built gym. This gym was extremely spacious, designed to mimic the layout of a gym, with several additional battle areas. Judging from the design and layout of the venue, the Great Xia authorities have put a lot of thought and attention into this selection. Lu Feng quietly surveyed the venue, a thoughtful expression on his face. He murmured, "With such a big official fuss, it's probably more than just a selection." As Lu Feng pondered this, Wu Feng slowly appeared. He walked to the platform at the edge of the venue, glanced down at the numerous trainers, and nodded slightly. Then, he slowly addressed the crowd, "Welcome everyone from afar. I'm sure you've all heard about the relevant details. There are 6 spots available this time. I hope you'll demonstrate your abilities. I wish you all the best." Then, the staff read out the selection rules and began the registration and lottery process. Lu Feng glanced at his number plate and slowly walked towards the designated venue. Due to the large number of trainers participating, the Great Xia Pokemon League has divided the selection into 5 days for special considerations. The first 3 days are for auditions, while the final 2 days are for the actual competition for the spots. To quickly select the qualified trainees, the competition is being held across multiple venues. A moment later, Lu Feng arrived at his battle arena, where his opponent had been waiting for a long time. A young man with ordinary appearance and slightly dark skin watched Lu Feng approach slowly, carefully examining him for a moment. Upon seeing the Eevee on Lu Feng's shoulder, he breathed a sigh of relief, a look of arrogance on his face. "Are you my opponent? You don't look that great," the boy kept chattering, constantly belittling Lu Feng. Lu Feng's brows furrowed slightly, a look of displeasure on his face, wondering where this man's confidence came from. But he said nothing, only to resolve himself to show the boy's true strength. "The battle rules are 1 vote 1. Now, please come forward and flip a coin to determine the order of attack." The referee, seeing both players arrive at a battle arena, spoke slowly and solemnly to Lu Feng and the young man. After a round of coin selection, the ordinary-looking boy received the right to attack first, but he also had to send out his Pokemon first. After some preparation, the referee signaled the two to begin. "Now, I'll let you witness my strength." The ordinary-looking boy sneered at Lu Feng and tossed his Pokeball. With a flash of blazing red light, a bird-like Pokemon appeared, its feathers slightly curled, its sharp claws black, and its body covered in lush gray-black feathers. Lu Feng chose to ignore the boy's words, thinking he was having a lot of internal drama. He must be a master of dirty tricks, for such trash talk came out of his mouth. He stared at the Pokemon before him, its familiar form dazed, and said, "Hairbird." This bird Pokemon was the Sinnoh region's home bird, nicknamed Hairbird by netizens due to its appearance. Lu Feng used his wave power to sense the Pokemon's aura, but upon discovering it was only an elite-level Pokemon, a strange expression crossed his face. Seeing the smug look on the boy's face, he couldn't help but look at a black question mark. After a slight shake of his head, he tossed out his Pokeball and sent out his Charizard. The boy's face froze as he saw the Charizard appear on the field, its aura slightly deeper. But upon seeing his own Pokemon, he couldn't help but cheer himself up. He had originally thought Lu Feng's Pokemon were all Eevee-like. But he didn't expect Lu Feng to casually throw out a Charizard, which immediately put him at a loss. "Mucko, use the swallow return technique." The young man, regaining consciousness, addressed Mucko directly. Hearing this, Mucko gave a soft cry and soared high into the sky. It circled for a moment before disappearing into shadow, its wings ablaze with light as it swiftly swooped down towards Charizard. Lu Feng observed the scene, his expression unchanged. He simply whispered to Charizard, "Charizard, let's go." Charizard, upon hearing Lu Feng's words, spit a stream of flame into the sky. Watching the swooping Mucko, it spun around and unleashed a dragon tail attack, carrying some of the force and smashing straight at it. Mucko sensed Charizard's powerful aura. Its expression changed slightly. It tried to sidestep, but it was too late and collided directly with Charizard. With a heavy thud, Mucko's body plummeted to the ground like a crashing plane. It struggled to rise from the ground, but before it could move, a blazing flame descended, its spark attack carrying the damage directly onto it, draining away its remaining strength. How could this be? The young man muttered, his face pale as he watched the scene unfold. Feng observed the young man's expression, shook his head slightly, and then retracted his Charizard and left. He slowly walked towards the surrounding arena, casually surveying it. As expected, Feng spotted several skilled trainers, and couldn't help but take a closer look. Among them, a young woman commanding a Dragonite was performing exceptionally well, instantly dispatching her opponent with a single blow, drawing gasps from the spectators. Through conversations with the surrounding trainers, Feng learned that this woman was none other than Rankayangsha, the forum-famous trainer who had earned the approval of both Dratini and her son in the wild area. Afterwards, Feng took Eevee to stroll around slowly for a while, then left the arena and walked slowly back towards the hotel. Chapter 103 Who is not a master of reverse attributes? The next day, Feng brought Eevee to the battle arena again. At the same venue as yesterday, Feng faced his second opponent. This time, he faced a pretty girl whose Pokémon was an elite-level electric Dragonite. Although electric types have a counter effect on flying types, Charizard's strength and command were no match for his. Charizard easily defeated him, allowing Feng to easily secure his second victory. Then, Feng's third match began. His opponent was a bearded, middle-aged man. His Pokémon was a peak-level elite-level monster. After considerable effort, Charizard finally managed to defeat him. Time passed slowly, and in the blink of an eye, it was already the fourth day. After the first 3 days of selection, only 128 trainers remained, qualifying for the final spot. These 100-plus trainers represented the pinnacle of Daksha's trainer prowess. After a simple breakfast, Feng arrived at the competition venue and waited patiently for his opponent. A moment later, a woman with the appearance of a city swan slowly approached the battlefield. She looked at Feng, who appeared calm, with a look of apprehension on her face. She had naturally become aware of Feng's existence after 3 days of gathering information, especially after seeing videos of him battling the Viridian Gym on the player forums. She had simply felt a sense of powerlessness. Then, with a charming expression, she softly addressed Feng, "Young man, please be merciful in the upcoming battle." Feng listened to her words, his gaze as calm as water, watching silently without directly responding. Seeing this, the woman couldn't help but curse Feng inwardly for being unromantic and a complete blockhead. After a brief preparation, the referee announced the 2 matches would be 2v2 and immediately declared the match begin. Feng slowly threw his Pokéball, sending out his Charizard. The woman, watching the Charizard on the field, couldn't help but feel delighted, her beautiful eyes sparkling with joy as she threw her own Pokéball. A penguin-like Pokémon with 2 golden appendages on its head connected to its beak and 4 foam balls printed on its abdomen appeared on the field. Feng looked at the Pokémon before him and couldn't help but glance at the woman, a puzzled expression on his face. This Pokémon was one of the Sinnoh region starter water Pokémon, Prince Pokémon. Regardless of how the woman obtained this Pokémon, it showed that she was no ordinary Pokémon. Otherwise, why were so many trainers able to obtain the starter Pokémon? Seeing that it was a water Pokémon that countered Charizard, Feng couldn't help but curl his lips, his eyes dark. After all, who isn't a master of counter attributes these days? Charizard, Dragon Wave, Feng thought for a moment before calmly addressing Charizard. Charizard, upon hearing this, immediately unleashed Dragon Wave, condensing a ball of blue-purple energy in front of him and hurling it directly at Prince Pokémon's position. Witnessing the mighty attack and feeling the immense energy, the royal sister trainer's expression darkened slightly. She then directed Prince Bo, use water gun on the ground. As her voice trailed off, a stream of water the size of a twig erupted from Prince Bo's beak, blasting towards the ground. Using the recoil from the impact of the water gun on the ground, he leaped into the air, dodging the Dragon Wave attack. But before Prince Bo could relax, Charizard appeared behind him, wielding its massive claws and slamming Prince Bo to the ground. Boom! A heavy crash resounded, and a massive crater suddenly appeared in the ground, sending dust billowing all around. The royal sister trainer, seeing the scene before her, wore a look of worry, and anxiously called out towards the pit, "Prince Bo, are you alright?" A sound gradually rose from the pit, followed by a gentle tremor, and Prince Bo suddenly leaped out of it. Covered in wounds, it gazed at Charizard in the air with a look of fear on its face. The previous Dragon Claw attack had dealt it considerable damage. If it hadn't been carrying the leftovers to recover, it wouldn't be in such good shape right now. The trainer breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing that Prince Bo was alright. She then gave the command, "Prince Bo, Bubble Beam." Upon receiving the command, a beam of blue light condensed from Prince Bo's orange beak and shot towards Charizard. Accompanied by a shower of shimmering bubbles, it hurtled directly towards Charizard. "Charizard, get out of the way," Feng commanded calmly, unfazed. Charizard flapped its wings and soared through the air, effortlessly dodging the blue beam attack. Only a stream of bubbles drifted through the air, reflecting the golden sunlight. The trainer, watching Charizard's relaxed demeanor, couldn't help but look anxious. She continued, addressing Prince Po, "Prince Po, use Tidal Swirl to stop Charizard." At this, Prince Po unleashed a long stream of water from his sharp beak, sweeping towards Charizard. It transformed into a water cage, trapping Charizard. The trainer, observing the scene before her, couldn't help but smile. She continued, addressing Prince Po, use this opportunity to use salt water at its maximum power. Upon hearing his trainer's command, Prince Po began to concentrate on his salt water move, but before he could execute it, Tidal Swirl suddenly split in two. Charizard concentrated its Dragon Claw move in its right hand. With its sharp claws, it tore through the water cage and sped towards Prince Po. Under Prince Po's incredulous gaze, he unleashed a terrifying jet of flame. Scorching flames descended, continuously burning it, stripping it of its last remaining fighting strength. The Queen Trainer, observing the scene on the field, gnashed her silver teeth, cast a somewhat annoyed glance at Feng, who remained indifferent, and slowly retracted Prince Po. Then, she tossed a Pokeball, releasing her second Pokémon. It was a lion-like Pokemon with round ears, black fur, and a long, thin tail with a yellow four-pointed star at the end. It was a common Pokémon from the Sinnoh region, a Rentgen, at the pinnacle of elite power. Gazing at the somewhat languid figure before him, sensing its elegant aura, Feng gazed a few more times. "Rentgen, electric field," the Queen Trainer addressed Rentgen after it appeared. Rentgen roared softly, and a golden electric current emanated from its body, instantly transforming the entire field into an electric field. 100,000 volts, as the Queen's voice echoed, a powerful electrical current suddenly erupted from the Rentgen cat's body. Golden lightning roared, and with the added power of the electrical field, the energy grew even more terrifying as it blasted towards Charizard's position. "Charizard, maximum powerful jet of flame," Feng calmly commanded Charizard, observing the lightning flashes before him indifferently. Charizard roared, its tail blazing fiercely, entering a state of raging fire. The fire energy within its body gradually gathered, until a terrifying stream of flame erupted from its mouth. Crimson flames and golden lightning collided fiercely, filling the air with a burning and destructive aura. Under the gaze of the onlookers, the flames and lightning, after a brief stalemate, finally clashed. The scorching flames broke through the lightning's barrier and landed directly on the Rentgen cat. The burning flames caused a flicker of pain on the Rentgen cat's face, and it couldn't help but scream. Rentgen cat, the female trainer couldn't help but cry out as she watched the battle unfold. Charizard, use Dragon Wave continuously. Feng glanced at the female trainer and gave Charizard the command. Charizard, upon hearing Feng's words, soared into the air and unleashed a series of terrifying Dragon Wave attacks towards Rentgen cat's location. The female trainer, upon hearing Feng's words, a look of anxiety crossed her face. She called out to Rentgen cat, get out of the way." Rentgen cat struggled for a moment, but due to its injuries, it had no time to dodge and could only watch helplessly as Dragon Wave descended. Under the bombardment of Dragon Wave, a thick cloud of dust gradually filled Rentgen cat's area, obscuring everything and making it difficult to see clearly. When the smoke cleared and the battlefield gradually returned to normal, Rentgen cat was seen lying on the ground, unable to fight. The trainer's face flashed with disappointment at the sight before her. She glanced at Feng with resigned displeasure and then slowly retracted Rentgen. With that, both of her Pokémon were rendered incapable of combat. The referee, observing this scene, announced the match's outcome to the crowd. Lu Feng slowly retracted his Charizard and left the arena, slowly making his way toward the spectator booth. The spectators gasped as they watched Lu Feng easily defeat the trainer, their hearts heavy as they watched him depart in the following matches, Lu Feng continued to command his Charizard, winning them with his masterful command. Meanwhile, the other trainers also stepped up, their formidable skills driving the competition forward. By that afternoon, the final 8 had been chosen, bringing the selection process to a fever pitch. Chapter 104: The Struggle for Weather Control. The next day, the sky was clear and the breeze was gentle. After a simple breakfast, Lu Feng slowly walked towards the venue of the competition. After the redraw, Lu Feng got his number plate. When he knew that he was in the third game, he closed his eyes and rested, slowly waiting for the game to begin. Time passed slowly, and after an unknown amount of time, it was finally Lu Feng's turn to play. He slowly walked to the competition venue, looked up at his opponent, and found that this person was Rankangsha, whom he had been paying attention to. He nodded slightly to her. Then, after some preparation, the referee announced the start of the game. Rankangsha and Lu Feng threw the Pokeballs in their hands together, and with a burst of red light, the figures of the two Pokemon appeared directly on the battlefield. The Pokemon that Rankangsha sent out was naturally the Dragonite that she captured from the wild wilderness area. It's Dragonite, as expected. Goddess Kyangsha's Dragonite is simply invincible. After so many matches, she's swept so many trainers. Some of Rankangsha's fans, upon seeing her first Pokemon, couldn't help but exclaim to the crowd around them, their faces a look of astonishment. Lu Feng looked at Rankangsha's Dragonite and couldn't help but scrutinize it. Upon realizing it was a true master, he couldn't help but sigh. If it weren't for Rankangsha's fortuitous encounter, this Dragonite might have fallen into Lu Feng's hands. The thought brought a complex expression to Lu Feng's face. As Lu Feng examined Rankangsha's Dragonite, Rankangsha was also examining his Pokemon. Her expression darkened as she gazed at the ferocious beast before him. The Pokemon Lu Feng had sent out was, naturally, Banjira. With Banjira's appearance and its roar, a gust of dust began to rise from the battlefield. Grains of sand slowly rose, gradually transforming the entire arena into desert. Is this the Banjira that challenged the mysterious Pokemon? Its aura is truly terrifying. The surrounding trainers, looking at Banjira, suddenly recalled the video on the player forums. They took a deep breath and exclaimed in horror. Rankangsha looked at Banjira and saw the sudden transformation of the arena, her expression darkening. After a moment's thought, she addressed Haxorus. Haxorus, use Rainmaker. Haxorus soared high into the sky, the blue orb on its tail and the Dragon Ball around its neck instantly blazing with dazzling light. The atmosphere within the arena shifted, becoming oppressive, like the scene before a storm. Clouds gathered above the arena, and a fierce wind howled, sweeping across the arena. Under the hull of the Dragonite, the clouds gradually transformed into water droplets, which pattered down towards the battlefield. Lu Feng looked at the scene before him, and information about the Dragonite suddenly emerged in his mind. The Dragonite is a long, snake-like Pokemon, covered in sapphire-colored scales, with a bright white belly. It has 2 small feather wings on either side of its head, and 3 crystal-like blue beads on its body. Its beads contain the power to manipulate the weather. When its entire body is enveloped by its aura, the surrounding weather will completely change. Are you trying to seize control of the weather? Lu Feng glanced at Rankangsha and asked softly. Rankangsha did not answer, but simply stared at the changing weather, her hands clenched tightly. Lu Feng scoffed, returning his gaze to Banjira, and whispered to it, Banjira, use Sandstorm. Show everyone what Sandstorm King is, Banjira. Banjira roared loudly at Lu Feng's words and unleashed Sandstorm, sending the wind and sand, which had been gradually subsiding due to the rain, flying once again. Just like that, within the battle arena, Rainmaker and Sandstorm collided. Banjira and Dragonite began to battle for control of the weather, raising the tension in the arena. Although the two hadn't yet formally clashed, their battle for control of the weather had already stirred the blood of the many trainers watching. Two opposing forces clashed fiercely within the small battle arena. Ultimately, Banjira emerged victorious, completely obliterating Rainmaker with Sandstorm, transforming the arena into a desert-like landscape. Countless clouds of sand flew toward Haxorus, gradually spreading towards his position. The beating of the sand and wind caused Haxorus to feel a slight pain, a fleeting expression of pain crossing his face. Rankayaksha, seeing the loss of the battle for the weather, frowned. After a brief moment of thought, she addressed Haxorus directly. Haxorus, use water tail. As her voice fell, Haxorus's body was gradually engulfed by the current. With all its might, it lashed out at Bagheera with its tail. Instantly, a torrent of water-based energy, like a raging wave, descended directly from its slender tail. Feng gazed at the powerful attack coming towards Bagheera and said calmly, Bagheera, use evil wave to counterattack. Bagheera, a ball of dark energy coalesced from Bagheera's body, crashing directly into the incoming water tail. The fierce collision neutralized the water tail's attack. Damn it, Rankayaksha couldn't help but growl as she watched Haxorus's attack fail. This exchange of skills revealed the gap between Haxorus and Bagheera, forcing her to be cautious. She then continued to command Haxorus, Haxorus, fly high and use Dragon Dance. Upon hearing her words, Haxorus gently curled up, its wings flapping violently as it soared high into the sky. Under the gaze of the crowd, it performed a Dragon Dance move by swirling, circling, and entwining itself in midair, amplifying its own strength. Feng looked up at Haxorus, whose aura was gradually growing stronger, his expression remaining calm. He whispered to Bagheera, let's use Dragon Dance too. Following Feng's command, Bagheera also began to use the Dragon Dance move, silently amplifying his own strength. Under the influence of the Dragon Dance, the wind and sand on the battlefield grew increasingly violent, gradually developing into a sandstorm. For a moment, the numerous trainers watching the transformation of the arena were stunned. Soon after, Dragonite was the first to complete the Dragon Dance amplification, letting out a high-pitched cry in the sky. Rankayaksha watched Dragonite, its momentum reaching its peak, and the frown on her face gradually relaxed. She then gave it a new command, Dragonite, Dragon Tail. Dragonite roared, unleashing all its might, and struck hard at Bagheera's position. The impact of the dragon's tail intensified the wind, and the dense dust seemed to be dispersed in an instant, spreading in both directions like flowing water. Bagheera, destruction beam, Feng shouted to Bagheera in a deep voice, watching the massive dragon's tail approach. Bagheera, upon hearing Feng's words, immediately used the destruction beam technique to counter the Dragonite's attack. Boom! With a violent explosion, the entire battlefield began to shake. A blinding flash of white light dazzled everyone. A moment later, when everyone's gaze returned to the battlefield, they saw Bagheera breathing heavily, his body involuntarily stiffening. Meanwhile, Dragonite lay sprawled on the ground, its face covered in wounds of varying sizes, evidently suffering considerable damage. Dragonite, are you alright? Rankayaksha asked, a look of concern crossing her face as she surveyed Dragonite's miserable state. Upon hearing Rankayaksha's call, Dragonite let out a faint howl, its voice growing fainter. Seeing this, Rankayaksha quickly put Dragonite away and swapped out her Pokémon, sending out her next Pokémon. It was still a Dragonite, but the aura of this new Dragonite was much stronger than the previous one. Hakrun, charge and use Water Tail. Seeing that Bagheera remained frozen, Rankayaksha immediately ordered Hakrun to action. Under her command, Hakrun condensed an even more powerful Water Tail, which smashed directly onto Bagheera, inflicting considerable damage. Bagheera's face showed a pained expression, and he took a few steps back. Feng first used his wave power to monitor Bagheera's condition, and upon discovering that Bagheera was in good condition, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he said to Bagheera, Bagheera, use Rock Slide. Bagheera began to condense the energy of the rocks, slowly transforming them into large pieces of rock, which hovered in front of him and hurled at the flying Hakrun. Hakrun repeatedly dodged, but due to the dense attack of rocks, he was accidentally hit by some of them. Rankayaksha watched the flying Haxorus fly and said anxiously, Haxorus, use Tornado to protect yourself. She had hoped to have Haxorus use Tornado to avoid Bagheera's attack by staying in the eye of the storm. But to her disappointment, Haxorus seemed to have ignored her command and cowered in the air, a look of fear on its face. Holding back, Feng chuckled softly at the scene before him and continued to Bagheera, Bagheera, use your maximum-powered freezing fist. Bagheera roared, charging directly at Haxorus and unleashing his freezing fist. While Haxorus cowered and offered no resistance, he struck it directly. Instantly, a piercing howl echoed, and Haxorus's body slammed heavily to the ground. Thick smoke billowed, and all was silent. All sound ceased at that moment. Chapter 105, The secret realm's quota is confirmed, and Swampert's strength improves. When the smoke and dust cleared, and the battleground reappeared before everyone, Rankai looked at the collapsed Haxorus, its body still frost-covered, a trace of worry on her face. She muttered absent-mindedly, "Haxorus." The numerous trainers watching the battle were deeply moved by the scene before them. They gazed at Lu Feng's indifferent figure, their eyes filled with awe. Rankai looked at Lu Feng with a complicated expression. She was silent for a long moment, as if pondering something. Soon, she sighed and said to Lu Feng, as expected of a trainer who has defeated the Viridian gym leader, "I surrender this match." Lu Feng was stunned at first, but after a moment's reflection, he understood the whole situation and nodded silently. He knew that Rankai's immediate surrender must have been a carefully considered decision, knowing she couldn't defeat him, and was determined to preserve her strength to compete for the remaining 2 spots. Upon hearing the news of Rankai's surrender, the many trainers watching the match gaped in surprise. They were about to say something, but the sight of Lu Feng stopped them. The referee, confirming Rankai's decision, declared Lu Feng the winner. Upon hearing this, Lu Feng silently retracted his bangla and slowly made his way toward the audience. Time slipped by, and in the blink of an eye, more than 2 hours had passed. Lu Feng sat in a quiet corner, occasionally teasing his Eevee and observing the ongoing match from the corner of his eye. 10 minutes later, just as Lu Feng was about to doze off, the final results were announced. Lu Feng, along with the other 3 quarterfinal winners, Rankai, and a player who had survived the elimination rounds, had earned a spot on the Atlantic Realm. Wu Feng told everyone to go back and wait. He would notify everyone together when the Atlantic Realm opened. At that time, the Great Xia Kingdom would dispatch a special plane to escort them to the Atlantic Realm. Upon hearing this news, Lu Feng nodded to everyone and slowly walked back to the hotel. Once there, he released Bangira, retrieved the energy cube and potion, and used Viridian's power to restore Bangira to its original state. Then, he collapsed onto the bed and fell into deep sleep. Meanwhile, after obtaining the final list, Wu Feng boarded a special vehicle and slowly made his way to the Elder's Pavilion. Soon after, he arrived at the Great Elder's office, handed the list to him, and waited respectfully. "Are these the young talents of our Great Xia nation today?" The Great Elder carefully reviewed the list, comparing the relevant information, and gently inquired. "Yes, Great Elder. These are the most powerful Pokémon trainers in our Great Xia nation," Wu Feng thought carefully before answering respectfully. "Perhaps some trainers haven't shown up, but this list is pretty accurate." The Great Elder listened to Wu Feng's answer and remained silent for a long moment, as if pondering something. After a moment, he slowly came to his senses and continued to ask Wu Feng, "So, do you think these people are worthy of being gym leaders in our Great Xia nation?" Wu Feng pondered for a few minutes, then looked at the Great Elder with a firm face and said, "Great Elder, based on the information I have and the interviews I've conducted, I believe these people's qualities should be trustworthy. In that case, then you should prepare to go and test their opinions to see if they are interested in serving as gym leaders in our Great Xia nation." The Great Elder looked out the window at the changing sky, his eyes filled with a complex expression, and said quietly. After Wu Feng left, the Great Elder glanced at the report on the table and said with a complicated tone, "I didn't expect the world fusion to cause this once clear sky to suddenly become so unpredictable." Following his gaze, he saw a report on a sinister organization and a wild Pokémon plague on the table. The next day, the morning glow was as bright as a ray of light. Lu Feng slowly awoke from his slumber. After a quick wash and breakfast, he took his Eevee out of the hotel and headed for a nearby battle club. After spending a considerable amount of money, Lu Feng signed up for a 7-day temporary membership and had the staff escort him to the training grounds. He planned to use these few days to thoroughly train and improve the strength of his Pokémon. Arriving in a quiet room, Lu Feng first took in the training room. It was spacious, well equipped with various training equipment, and its strength must have been of a relatively high standard. Lu Feng nodded slightly, then released several of his Pokémon. He first fixed his gaze on Eevee, watching it for a moment before saying, "Eevee, starting today, you two will be training." Eevee had now passed its early stages and was ready for some simpler training. So, Lu Feng decided to include Eevee in the training. Eevee's face lit up with eagerness after hearing Lu Feng's words. It had been watching videos about the game for a while, and had been eagerly anticipating it. Lu Feng then laid out a plan for Eevee. First, let it build up its stamina and practice its skills and moves, striving to master them to the point of absolute mastery before moving on to the next training plan. After all, Feng envisioned Eevee as a clone-based strategy, and the key to this strategy was its stand ability. To use stands constantly, one needed to have ample stamina and master these skills to a high level. Therefore, Eevee's own stamina was naturally the top priority in Feng's training. After addressing Eevee's situation, Feng turned and walked over to Articuno. He gazed at the icy blue, holy and beautiful Articuno before him and said gently, "Articuno, for now, continue to cultivate your understanding of ice energy and strive to increase the power of your ice-based skills." Feng envisioned developing Articuno's ice-based abilities using Sleeth as a model. Later, he would search for items imbued with the power of Celebi or Dialga and allow Articuno to cultivate it, aiming to boost its ice-based abilities to the point of temporarily freezing. Chirp! Articuno nodded slightly at Feng after hearing his plan, then ran to a corner, silently cultivating its own ice-based energies. Finally, Feng headed straight for Swampert. It had been a week since Swampert had cultivated the ruby and cyan orb fragments. Feng wanted to know Swampert's current strength. "Swampert, let me see what you've accomplished this week," Feng said softly, looking at Swampert with anticipation. Swampert, hearing this, Swampert looked at Feng solemnly and nodded slightly. Swampert first concentrated its water energy, and suddenly the symbol Greek letter Alpha appeared on its body, instantly generating a terrifying force. Like a surging sea, it swept with turbulent waves, carrying astonishing power, ready to burst forth. Feng took in the scene before him, sensing the ripples emanating from Swampert, and quickly said to Swampert, "Swampert, that's enough." "Stop." Swampert's face shifted with confusion, but he slowly dispersed the skills he had concentrated in his hands. Looking at the dissipated skills, Feng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Swampert didn't unleash this rude wave directly, otherwise Feng felt he wouldn't have left the battle club today. After calming his complex emotions, Feng slowly communicated with Swampert through Viridian's power. Through this brief exchange, Feng gained a general understanding of Swampert's current situation. Swampert had already mastered both Cliff Sword and Root Wave, but since they weren't his own signature moves, their power and effectiveness couldn't compare to those of Flyless and Shovelth. Furthermore, because these two powers were inherently opposed, Swampert couldn't use both simultaneously, which left Feng somewhat disappointed. Originally, he had envisioned Swampert holding Root Wave in his left hand and Cliff Sword in his right. However, the inherent opposition between these two powers completely shattered his plan. However, using these two moves allowed Swampert to temporarily reach the level of a Celestial King, a significant achievement. In that case, your next task is to improve your mastery of these two skills. Feng pondered for a moment, then spoke gently to Swampert. "Swampert." Swampert growled at Feng, entering into his comprehension mode once again. Feng looked at his Pokémon, feeling a promising future ahead, and a smile flickered across his face. Chapter 106, Official Invitation to the Secret Land of the Atlantic Ocean. Time passed slowly, and the sky gradually darkened. Feng, carrying a weary-looking Eevee, walked out of the battle club and slowly headed back towards the hotel. Eevee slumped weakly in Feng's arms, gazing at the vibrant neon lights and calling out listlessly. Feng looked at the exhausted Eevee and silently used Viridian's power to help it recover. He softly said to Eevee, "Eevee, your first training session today was great. I'll give you an extra bottle of Moo Moo milk later." Eevee's eyes lit up at Feng's promise, and he said expectantly. 10 minutes later, Feng returned to the hotel where he was staying. He had just handed Eevee the Moo Moo milk and hadn't had time to rest when he heard a knock on his door. Feng glanced at the door with a hint of surprise, a thoughtful expression on his face. He asked, bewildered, who could it be? Then, he slowly walked towards the door. As he opened it, he was surprised to see a very familiar face. Feng stared at the figure in astonishment, asking, puzzled, "President Wu, what's going on?" It was Feng. He looked at the bewildered Feng, a faint smile playing across his face. He said warmly, "I'm sorry for the intrusion." Feng's face grew increasingly bewildered as he listened, but he let him into the room. Eevee, still sipping Moo Moo milk, heard the noise at the door and jerked his head up. Seeing it was Feng, he softly greeted him. Feng first took out a bottle of water and handed it to Feng. After a moment's thought, he asked, "President Wu, is there anything you want to tell me that brought you here today?" Feng was silent for a moment, as if weighing his words. Then, looking at him seriously, he said, "I've come here today mainly to discuss two matters." He paused briefly, glancing at Lu Feng's expression. Lu Feng remained silent, listening quietly, waiting for Wu Feng's next words. Then, Wu Feng spoke again. "The first is about entering the secret realm. Tomorrow morning, we'll send a special plane to take you to the vicinity of the Atlantic secret realm. Please arrive at the Elf Alliance on time." Lu Feng nodded slightly, his expression remaining unchanged. He knew that Wu Feng could simply notify him of the meeting time over the phone. Why would he go to such an inconvenience late at night? Therefore, there must be something more important that Wu Feng needed to tell him in person. Seeing Lu Feng's calm expression, Wu Feng's eyes flickered with admiration. He sighed softly, then continued, "There's another thing. Our great Xia nation is planning to establish a gymnasium to protect the cities and people of various regions. After careful consideration, we'd like to invite you to serve as the gym leader of one of these cities. What do you think?" Lu Feng listened to Wu Feng's words with a look of surprise. He hadn't expected Wu Feng to visit him today for such a matter. For a moment, Lu Feng fell silent, lost in thought. Wu Feng observed Lu Feng's contemplation but didn't urge him. Instead, he sat quietly, sipping his mineral water and waiting. After a long pause, Lu Feng regained his composure. He stared at Wu Feng for a long moment before slowly speaking, "President Wu, you know we're heading to the Pokémon world. Setting up a gym now doesn't seem very useful, does it?" Wu Feng sighed, looking at Lu Feng with a complicated expression. "I understand what you're saying, but with the merging of worlds, so many unexpected events have occurred. We're just preparing for a rainy day. Besides, setting up gyms now is just for a future preparation. Right now, we're just conducting preliminary screening to ensure stability within the Great Xia Nation." "So, what are the responsibilities of the current gym leader?" Lu Feng asked, his brow furrowed slightly, puzzled. "Today's gym leaders only need to maintain order in their cities and prevent wild Pokémon from attacking," Wu Feng said in a low voice. Lu Feng nodded slightly, briefly pondered, and readily agreed. After all, there are too many demons and monsters in this world, and Lu Feng's family is still in Daxia. Because he's entering the spirit world, he can't stay close to them forever. Perhaps joining the official forces would allow him to better protect his family's safety with their help. He could also rely on the official forces to help him collect the necessary Mega Evolution Stones. Seeing Lu Feng agree, Wu Feng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, a look of surprise on his face. After some discussion, Lu Feng decided to move the gym built for him by the official forces directly to Pingshan City. Then, Lu Feng took out a Mega Evolution Stone and handed it to Wu Feng, saying seriously, "President Wu, please keep an eye out for items similar to this stone and try to collect them. This item may become Daxia's future trump card." "Okay, I understand." Wu Feng's face was filled with shock. He looked at Lu Feng, as if he was about to speak, but he didn't express his doubts. He just spoke seriously. He knew Lu Feng had a purpose behind his words. From what he knew of Lu Feng, he wasn't someone who would act without purpose. Seeing Wu Feng agree, Lu Feng breathed a sigh of relief. He had been debating how to explain the Mega Evolution Stone, but he hadn't expected Wu Feng to agree so readily. After receiving a satisfactory answer, Wu Feng slowly left Lu Feng's hotel and hurried anxiously toward his next destination. The sun rose and the moon set, light and darkness alternated. The night gradually faded, and dawn broke through the sky. Watching the first light of day, Lu Feng quickly washed up and had breakfast, then left the hotel and slowly walked toward the Pokémon Alliance headquarters. A moment later, he arrived in front of the Pokémon Alliance and, looking at the others already waiting there, gave a slight nod as a greeting. After another half-hour of waiting, Wu Feng finally appeared, accompanied by 3 trainers from the Great Xia Pokémon Alliance. He slowly approached Lu Feng and the others. He looked around carefully, and when he saw everyone was present, he said to them, "Now that everyone's here, let's head out." Then, led by him, Lu Feng and the others slowly boarded a special plane and flew slowly towards the Atlantic secret realm. Gazing out the window at the drifting white clouds and the sharp wind, Lu Feng slowly closed his eyes, entering a state of quiet contemplation. Just then, Ran Qiangsha's voice rang out, instantly capturing Lu Feng's attention, and the surrounding trainers turned their gazes. "President, could you please tell us about this Atlantic secret realm?" Upon hearing this, Wu Feng looked at the curious crowd and a hint of bitterness crossed his face. After a moment's reflection, he explained. It's not that I'm unwilling to share the information, but we don't know much about it. After all, this secret realm has only just appeared. And we don't know much about what's within. For your safety, please remain vigilant at all times, Wu Feng concluded his remarks, reminding the trainers to prevent any unforeseen circumstances. After hearing Wu Feng's answer, everyone's faces were filled with disappointment, yet also a certain resignation. Time slowly slipped by, and after over 10 hours of flight, Lu Feng and his companions finally approached their destination. Their plane slowly descended onto a large island. After the plane came to a steady stop, Lu Feng and his companions, led by Wu Feng, gradually arrived at a camp on the island. Trainers from other nations were already waiting there, and upon seeing the great Xia people arrive, their faces lit up with confusion. By this point, with the exception of the trainers from the Bald Eagle Federation and the Kingdom of Great Britain, all the other qualified nations had arrived. The presence of so many trainers brought a sense of life and bustle to the once desolate island. "President, where's the secret realm you mentioned?" a great Xia trainer asked, perplexed, as he saw nothing of note around him. After hearing the trainer's words, Wu Feng couldn't help but laugh. He stared at the nearby sea, pointed a finger, and said to the crowd, "The secret realm you are going to is beneath the sea." After hearing Wu Feng's words, everyone looked at the calm sea in front of them and was stunned. For a moment, everyone was silent, and the atmosphere gradually became a little tense. Chapter 107 The Most PY Legendary Pokémon. Just as Lu Feng and the others fell silent after hearing Wu Feng's words, trainers from other nations were also engaged in a brief discussion not far away. They looked at Lu Feng and the others with malicious expressions on their faces. The leading trainer from Fuzhou addressed the others, saying, "Everyone, this exploration of the secret realm is crucial to the future of the Empire. Please exercise extreme caution. If you encounter trainers from Daxia, you are permitted to intervene if conditions permit." Upon hearing their leader's words, the Fuzhou trainers' faces grew grave. They looked at him gravely and said, "Hey, we will never forget the glory of the Empire. Yoshi, Watanabe wishes you all good luck in your military endeavors." The Fuzhou leader, upon hearing the group's promise, showed appreciation, a hint of a smile flickering across his face. Meanwhile, the leader from Hoenn was also speaking to the trainers, his voice filled with excitement. "Everyone, this exploration of the secret realm is entirely dependent on you. The Great Cold Nation will never forget your contributions, Smite. If we encounter trainers from the Great Summer Nation, we must give them a good beating and let them know how powerful we are, Smite." Upon hearing this, the numerous Great Cold Nation trainers nodded solemnly to their leader, their eyes flickering as they looked at Lu Feng and the others. This situation repeated itself within the teams of numerous other nations. For a moment, like the calm before a storm, the entire island seemed to be plunged into a strange state. Not long after, the trainers from the Bald Eagle Federation and the British Kingdom finally appeared. They were covered in dust and dirt, looking as if they had just arrived from a desert. This made Lu Feng stare at them a few times, a hint of confusion crossing his face. But before he could think anything more, Wu Feng approached them and told them they could enter the sea and begin their exploration of the secret realm. Watching everyone begin their movement, Lu Feng slowly suppressed his doubts and retrieved Swampert's Pokéball. After donning his diving gear, he, with Swampert's help, descended directly beneath the surface. Led by Lu Feng, the trainers from the Great Xia Kingdom gathered together and carefully swam towards the secret realm. Apparently, due to the secret realm, the number of wild Pokémon in the vicinity had gradually increased. Lu Feng continuously directed Swampert, attacking the nearby wild Pokémon and dispersing many that blocked their path. "Swampert, use Water Wave. Push all the Pokémon in this area." Upon hearing this, Swampert unleashed Water Wave directly at the gathering Pokémon. Seeing this, the other trainers also issued commands to their Pokémon. In an instant, the entire vicinity was engulfed in a barrage of skills and moves. After some effort, the surrounding wild Pokémon finally realized that Lu Feng and his companions were not to be trifled with and slowly retreated. Suddenly, a trainer from the Great Xia Kingdom, seemingly on notice, commanded his starfish to unleash a skill attack at a location not far away. Lu Feng and his companions watched the maneuver with puzzled expressions on their faces, but said nothing, simply waiting. As the starfish attacked, a protrusion in the shallow sea gradually revealed its true form. Lu Feng and his companions' pupils widened as they stared at this sudden appearance, their entire bodies utterly dazed. "Is this the wreckage of a spaceship?" Ran Qiangshi blurted out, taking in the object before her. Lu Feng examined the craft carefully, his expression shifting constantly. This craft was unlike any on Blue Planet. Due to the erosion of the sea and the ravages of time, it appeared rusty, its origins unrecognizable. Only a faint P marking could be discerned on the ship's hull. Lu Feng stared at the P mark before him, feeling as if he had seen it somewhere before, a strange sense of familiarity. This doesn't look like a Blue Planet ship, does it? A trainer obsessed with military equipment asked uncertainly, looking at the craft before him. Lu Feng couldn't help but laugh at this person's words. If it's not a Blue Planet ship, then it can't be the alien spacecraft shot down during the humanity's counterattack in 1999, right? The trainer's expression shifted after hearing Lu Feng's words, as if he was about to speak, but for a long time, no words came out. Soon after some discussion, the group concealed the unusual ship again, secretly noting its location and planning to report it to Wu Feng upon their return. They then continued their descent, slowly approaching the secret realm. Due to the considerable time spent on the journey, no trainers from other nations were around. As time passed, Lu Feng and the others gradually approached the edge of the secret realm. Under the glowing corals of the seafloor, a hidden underwater city slowly came into view. From a distance, the buildings appeared to be arranged in concentric circles, separated by ships. In the very center, 3 pyramid-like structures guarded an extremely ancient temple. The entire city seemed enveloped by a mysterious force, completely isolating it from the surrounding waters and making it resemble a vast network of surface cities. Lu Feng and the others gazed at the underwater city ahead, stunned. They gazed at the ancient sculptures, the weathered stone carvings, and the scattered palace pillars, and for a moment, they were lost in thought, speechless. Is this the legendary Atlantis? It's truly magnificent, a Daksha trainer exclaimed, swallowing hard as he gazed at the city before them. After a long pause, once everyone had regained their composure, Lu Feng slowly spoke, "Let's go, everyone." As they entered the city, a dazzling flash of light appeared before their eyes. Before anyone could react, it vanished at the edge of the city. When the light faded and everyone opened their eyes again, their faces darkened. Everyone had vanished. Their companions, who had just been chatting and laughing, had vanished without a trace. At a certain point in the underwater city, Lu Feng first used his wave guide to search for signs of life nearby. To his disappointment, there were only scattered buildings around, but no signs of human activity at all. Lu Feng sighed, gazed towards the city center, and slowly advanced with Swampert. As he advanced, wild water Pokémon gradually appeared along the way. These wild Pokémon were not very powerful, and they gazed at Lu Feng and Swampert with curiosity. Especially after sensing Lu Feng's friendly aura, a look of deep confusion crossed his face. "Hey, that's Froggy and Squirtle." Lu Feng suddenly saw several extremely rare Pokémon and exclaimed in surprise. However, Lu Feng was somewhat disappointed to find that these Pokémon weren't particularly talented, and Froggy's special ability was in transformation, which immediately dampened his desire to capture them. What a shame. Lu Feng looked at the Pokémon, shook his head slightly, and continued slowly towards the city center. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Feng arrived at a somewhat dilapidated corridor. A relief carving appeared on the corridor, seemingly recording some relevant information. Lu Feng first observed the surroundings. After confirming there was no danger, he had Swampert guard the surroundings and walked over to the relief to carefully examine it. Through the information left by the relief, Lu Feng learned some secrets of the past, and a look of understanding appeared on his face. The magnificent underwater city he stood in was once built by the people of the sea to venerate a legendary Pokémon. This legendary Pokémon had once provided the people of the sea with shelter from the devastating floods when it descended upon the Blue Planet. But at some unknown time, this legendary Pokémon vanished. Without its protective power, Atlantis was eventually submerged by a devastating flood, and the city was lost beneath the sea. According to the relief carving, this legendary Pokémon was not very large, a small blue creature with 2 long tentacles on its head, each ending in a spherical shape. Lu Feng gazed at the legendary Pokémon on the relief, a complex expression on his face. He murmured in wonder, "A city dedicated to Manaphy." If Lu Feng remembered correctly, this mythical Pokémon wasn't particularly powerful, but it possessed a keen understanding of the ways of the world. Utilizing its innate magical power, the ability to connect with any Pokémon, it successfully bred numerous powerful Pokémon, allowing it to thrive in this vast ocean. Suddenly, as if struck by a thought, Lu Feng looked up toward the center of the city. Perhaps the Central Ocean Temple holds Manaphy's belongings, or even the belongings of other powerful Pokémon, Lu Feng muttered, his breath quickening at the thought, his face flushed. Then, leading Swampert, he sped towards the Central Temple, not daring to delay even a moment. Chapter 108 Black Book, rushing to the Sea Temple. Time slipped slowly, and in the blink of an eye, 3 hours had passed. Lu Feng and Swampert gradually arrived at a location not far from the temple. Gazing at the distant Sea Temple, Lu Feng's face lit up with joy, and he began to quicken his pace. Just as he was about to continue forward, his expression suddenly changed, as if sensing something. Then, Lu Feng addressed Swampert. Swampert, at 6 o'clock, use Muddy Current. Instantly, a surge of water energy erupted from Swampert's body, and a turbid stream of water shot out in the direction Lu Feng pointed, carrying a powerful force that collided directly with the incoming attack. Boom! The collision of the two powerful attacks triggered a violent explosion, the aftermath of which spread in all directions. The terrifying wave, whipped by a howling wind, gradually reduced the surrounding sculptures and buildings to dust. Smoke and dust rose, and a thick fog filled the air, obscuring the entire surrounding area. Swampert stood in front of Lu Feng, surveying his surroundings with extreme caution, carefully protecting him. Lu Feng's face darkened as he gazed at the smoky scene. If he hadn't sensed the energy fluctuations through his wave power, he would have been annihilated by the attack. After a moment's thought, Lu Feng tossed Gardevoir's Pokéball and said to it, Gardevoir, help me check for signs of life. Gardevoir, observing the fury on Lu Feng's face, nodded and began using its psychic ability to sense nearby life. With a flash of faint blue light, Gardevoir erupted with powerful telekinesis, radiating from their position in all directions. Atop a building about 1,000 meters away, a blonde British Kingdom trainer observed Lu Feng's safety with an exasperated expression, cursing silently. Oh. Shit, FCKU, he slowly put down the telescope in his hand, trying to find another opportunity to continue attacking Lu Feng. This time when entering Atlantis, many countries had a common consensus, that is, to snipe the trainers of Daxia Kingdom, to prevent the trainers of Daxia Kingdom from obtaining any items from this place and let Daxia Kingdom rise again. In response to this, the trainer from the British Kingdom, after discovering Lu Feng's whereabouts, saw that he had not noticed his whereabouts, so he couldn't wait to take action. A few minutes later, Gardevoir suddenly opened his eyes, and used his superpowers to transmit a picture he perceived to Lu Feng's mind. Lu Feng looked at the picture that emerged in his mind, his face suddenly became cold, and he glanced at the position of the British Kingdom trainer, intentionally or unintentionally with a corner of his eyes. After a brief moment of thought, Lu Feng fixed his gaze on Swampert and spoke in a cold voice, Swampert, use arm hammer on the ground. Swampert, upon hearing Lu Feng's words, concentrated all its strength into its right arm and slammed the ground in front of it fiercely. Instantly, the ground, unable to withstand the powerful attack, began to crack. Countless clouds of dust rose into the air, once again obscuring the surrounding space. Lu Feng seized this opportunity to retrieve Swampert and, using Gardevoir's teleport, teleported to a location not far from the British Kingdom trainer. The British Kingdom trainer, watching his vision once again obscured, pounded hard on a nearby pillar, his face gradually turning pale. At this moment, a ferocious-looking Pokémon beside him. Its face covered in shaggy white fur, its ears and nose slightly elongated, and wearing high-heeled wooden clogs, seemed to sense something and suddenly looked in a certain direction. The blonde trainer, startled by his Pokémon's strange expression, turned and looked toward the direction it pointed. Who? He stared nervously in the direction before him, a solemn expression on his face. After hearing the blonde trainer's words, Lu Feng slowly emerged from his hiding place with Gardevoir, his expression coldly gazing at the blonde man before him. What? Why are you here? Upon seeing Lu Feng's expression, the blonde trainer's face lit up with shock, and he couldn't help but utter a word. Lu Feng looked at the Pokémon beside him, carefully recalling it, and realized it was the Grass plus Dark-type Cunning Tengu. Without further ado, Lu Feng addressed Gardevoir. Gardevoir, Eye of Miracle. As Lu Feng's voice fell, an illusion resembling an eye appeared on Gardevoir's body, and then a pink energy wave enveloped it. Psychic power, Lu Feng spoke again after seeing the Eye of Miracle completed. Gardevoir roared in a high-pitched voice, its psychic energy suddenly erupting, pouring directly towards the position of Cunning Tengu and the blonde man. Sensing the overwhelming force within Gardevoir, Cunning Tengu looked at its master with some trepidation, its body trembling slightly. The blonde man, observing Lu Feng's actions, panicked and quickly directed Cunning Tengu to launch a counterattack. A ball of black energy emerged from Cunning Tengu's body, and he unleashed the Dark Wave technique, carrying a chilling aura of malice, attacking Gardevoir's psychic force. Rumble. In an instant, the two skills collided. After a brief exchange, the psychic force, empowered by the Eye of Miracle, shattered Cunning Tengu's Dark Wave and flew towards the blonde man and Cunning Tengu. Bang! Two heavy voices echoed, and the Cunning Tengu and the blonde man were sent flying backwards towards a nearby pillar like kites with their strings cut. The blonde man glanced at Lu Feng with a pale expression and continued to bark orders at the Cunning Tengu. Countless leaves erupted from the Cunning Tengu's body, attacking Gardevoir and Lu Feng, attempting to use the leaf blade skill to repel the approaching Gardevoir. Use telekinesis, block it, Lu Feng said calmly to the Gardevoir, his expression calm as he watched the blade swirl. Upon hearing Lu Feng's command, Gardevoir erupted with immense telekinesis, restraining the flying leaf blades and reeling them back towards the Cunning Tengu. The Cunning Tengu endured the leaf blade's attack, a pained expression on his face, and he howled loudly. Looking at the severely injured Cunning Tengu, Lu Feng pressed forward, addressing Gardevoir directly. Use Magic Flash at maximum power, Gardevoir. Gardevoir shouted softly, unleashing Magic Flash directly at Cunning Tengu. With a cascade of Magic Flash, the already severely injured Cunning Tengu instantly lost its fighting ability. The British Kingdom trainer, blood oozing from the corners of his mouth, looked on at the battle's end with a flicker of panic in his eyes. He was about to retrieve his remaining Pokeballs, but Lu Feng gave him no chance, allowing Gardevoir to restrain the blonde man with a telekinetic move. Looking at the blonde man before him, Lu Feng's face was icy, his eyes filled with murderous intent. The blonde trainer tried to speak, but Lu Feng had no patience to listen. He simply glanced at Gardevoir. A few minutes later, Lu Feng and Gardevoir were gone, leaving only the blonde man's figure, lifeless. All around him was empty, everything had vanished. Lu Feng retrieved Charizard's Pokeball, mounted it, and continued toward the central temple. He counted his recent loot, and seeing it was just ordinary items, he sighed and shook his head slightly. Just when he thought there was nothing special, a pitch-black book caught his eye, instantly capturing his attention. What is this? Lu Feng stared at the book in confusion, slowly opening it. The book contained some information, but because it was written in pharaonic script, Lu Feng reluctantly put it down. They're truly the descendants of bandits. Even if they flaunt civilization, it can't change the sin in their blood. Lu Feng looked at the book, thinking of the British Kingdom trainer, and couldn't help but sneer. Initially, when Lu Feng saw the trainers from the Bald Eagle Federation and the British Kingdom, he wondered where the dust and sand on them came from. After some thought, he found the answer. If he guessed correctly, the book before him must be the item stolen from the Pharaoh Kingdom by trainers from the British Kingdom. But what exactly is this thing? Why would trainers from these two countries value it so much? Lu Feng said blankly, his face full of confusion, looking at the book in his hand. At this time, Charizard slowly slowed down. It turned its head and growled at Lu Feng, indicating that Lu Feng's mind had arrived near the sea temple. After hearing Charizard's roar, Lu Feng slowly came to his senses, suppressed his doubts, and carefully put the black book away. Then, he let Charizard slowly descend to the ground. At this time, many trainers had gathered in front of the underwater temple in the center of the city. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 Entering the Sea Temple. Numerous trainers gazed at the sea temple before them, their eyes filled with expressions of greed, shock, and longing, yet no one could enter. Lu Feng searched carefully and spotted Rankai-Angsha and the others somewhere in the crowd. He then slowly walked towards them. Seeing Lu Feng's presence, Rankai-Angsha and the others breathed a sigh of relief, their tense bodies slowly relaxing. Lu Feng, you're finally here. We thought you'd met with an accident. Rankai-Angsha looked at Lu Feng, a hint of joy on her face. What happened to you? Were you attacked by wild Pokémon, or by trainers from other countries? Suddenly, Lu Feng frowned at the trainers from the Great Xia Kingdom. Their clothing was slightly torn, and their faces were slightly pale, indicating they'd been in a fierce battle, but thankfully, no one was hurt. We were first attacked by wild Pokémon, and then the Fuso trainers took advantage of the situation and attacked. Fortunately, we found our companions, otherwise we probably wouldn't have made it this far." The Daxia trainers' faces flashed with anger, and they glanced at the Fuso trainers. After listening to their words, Lu Feng's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he said to them, "Then you should rest for now. I'll avenge you when the opportunity arises." The trainees' faces lit up with gratitude, and they slowly walked away to recover from their injuries. Then, Lu Feng looked at the people standing in front of the temple, yet they hadn't entered, their face filled with confusion. Ran Qiangsha seemed to see Lu Feng's confusion and whispered, "This temple has some restrictions. We're still trying to figure out how to get in." After saying this, she surveyed the sea temple for a few more seconds and sighed. At this moment, countless trainers, seemingly impatient, led by a certain Uncle Sam from the Bald Eagle Federation, unleashed their Pokémon in a fierce attack on the temple. Instantly, a myriad of skills and moves erupted, and a multitude of elemental energies intertwined, transforming into destructive force that slammed down upon the sea temple. A violent explosion echoed, and the entire sea temple shook. Numerous trainers watched with knowing smiles, believing its defenses had been breached. But when the situation subsided, they gazed back with anticipation, only to be met with expressions of profound shock and embarrassment. The sea temple before them remained unchanged, standing as immovable as before. "Damn it! Is there no way out?" a trainer in the crowd exclaimed, a bit frustrated, as he watched. Seeing this, the other trainers, speaking in various dialects, vented their frustration. After a long moment, once everyone's anger had been vented, they all looked dejectedly at the sea temple and began to quietly leave, heading towards other parts of the city. Lu Feng slowly approached the temple and used his wave power to sense it. Sure enough, he discovered a thin membrane-like force surrounding it, tightly protecting it and keeping everyone out. He tried again and again, but was unable to break the temple's barrier. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Swampert emerge from the advanced orb. Lu Feng glanced at Swampert with some confusion, only to see him hand a brilliant blue orb fragment directly to him. A look of surprise crossed Lu Feng's face as he gazed at the brilliant blue orb fragment. He sensed the orb fragment becoming extremely active, its light constantly flowing. Lu Feng looked at the orb fragment in his hand, then at the temple before him, a thoughtful expression on his face. Then, he forced down the throbbing in his heart, slowly gathered up the orb fragments, and returned to his previous position with Swampert. By then, most of the trainers from the previous Ocean Temple had already left, and the Fuso trainers had also quietly retreated. Lu Feng glanced at their departure point, motioned for Ran Qiangsha and the others to follow, and led them in pursuit. Soon, they arrived in front of a collapsed building in the city. The Fuso trainers were already waiting there, and upon seeing Lu Feng and the others, a sneer crossed their faces. "Trainers from the Great Xia Kingdom, are you humiliating yourself again?" the leading Fuso trainer said teasingly, looking at Lu Feng and the others, whose breathing fluctuated. "HMPH, Iro, if you hadn't taken advantage of this opportunity to launch a sneak attack, it's hard to say who would have won." Upon hearing Iro's words, the several Great Xia trainers snorted coldly, looking at them with unfriendly expressions. "Tisk, all is fair in war, that's an old saying from your Great Xia Kingdom. Don't you know that?" Ito scoffed, a sneer in his face. The other Fuso trainers burst into laughter, looking at them with a mocking expression. "You?" Upon hearing this, the Daxia trainers blushed and were speechless for a long time. Lu Feng waved his hand, letting them pass. He glanced at Ito and the others coldly, his eyes blazing as a ray, and said calmly, "We in the Great Xia Kingdom also have a saying, where there is hatred, there must be revenge. I wonder if the Fuso people could teach me something about this." Ito gave Lu Feng a blank look, then laughed. "Since you've asked for trouble, we Fuso people are naturally very pleased." Then, Ito threw his Pokeball, sending out a crow head. The crow chief wore a black hat, with a distinct red hue on its wings and tail. Its entire body was pitch black, giving it a menacing appearance. Lu Feng glanced at the crow chief and, realizing it was a gym fresher, immediately dispatched his Charizard. "Crow chief, attack the vitals," Ito observed Charizard, sensing its deep aura. Undeterred, he addressed the crow chief directly. The crow chief let out a disturbing cry, seizing an opening, its wings gleaming with light as it slashed towards Charizard. Lu Feng glanced at Iro, watching the attack about to reach Charizard. Without batting an eye, he declared, "Use Dragon Claw to block it." Charizard roared, its right claw glowing with a bluish-purple light. It charged forward, colliding directly with the Crow Chief's attack. Bang! 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 With the sound of a fierce collision, Charizard and Crow King gradually distanced themselves, circling in the sky and confronting each other. Seeing the casual expression on Charizard's face, Ito's expression suddenly darkened. Before he could utter a word, Lu Feng's command came first. Charizard, Rock Slide. As Lu Feng's voice fell, Charizard flapped its wings and immediately launched Rock Slide. Under the horrified gaze of Crow King, a huge rock crashed directly into it, knocking it to the ground and causing it great damage. Crow King, Ito looked at the scene before him, his eyes bloodshot, and he couldn't help but roar. Charizard, the final Rock Slide. Lu Feng glanced at Ito indifferently and said in a cold tone. After hearing Lu Feng's words, Ito anxiously called to Crow Chief. Crow Chief, get out of the way. Crow Chief, upon hearing Ito's words, was about to flap his wings and fly back into the air to avoid the attack, but due to his injuries, he was a beat too late. With a wailing wail, Crow Chief was instantly rendered incapacitated by the rock slide. The surrounding Fuso trainers watched in disbelief, their faces filled with curses. Baka, they flung their Pokémon, attempting to attack Charizard, but before they could, Gardevoir's powerful psychic attack subdued them. Instantly, Gardevoir's powerful psychic sent a powerful wave of energy, rendering them incapacitated. Lu Feng calmly scanned the numerous Fuso trainers. Under his gaze, they all lowered their heads, not daring to meet his gaze. Lu Feng chuckled softly and left with the Daksha trainers. Even after walking for a while, the angry roars of the Fuso trainers could still be heard. Lu Feng pondered for a moment before parting ways with Rankaiangsha and the others. He headed back toward the Ocean Temple. 10 minutes later, he reappeared in front of the Ocean Temple. By then, there were no trainers in sight. Perhaps seeing no hope of entering, many trainers had left. Lu Feng retrieved the bright blue orb fragment and approached the Ocean Temple. As if sensing something, the membrane covering the Ocean Temple parted, revealing a passage. Lu Feng, holding the orb fragment, led Swampert and Gardevoir and slowly entered. As Lu Feng entered the temple, the entire Ocean Temple began to violently shake, then vanished into the magnificent underwater city, rapidly escaping into the depths of the sea. Chapter 110, a Pokémon with a cute appearance, but a dark heart. With the departure of the Ocean Temple, a violent tremor erupted throughout Atlantis. The ground shook, the air trembled, and the surrounding waters churned like a raging sea. Trainers from various nations, sensing this powerful tremor, couldn't help but express horror. Everyone became uneasy, their eyes filled with fear. When everything subsided, they looked in the direction of the sound and saw that the place where the Ocean Temple had once stood was completely empty. Upon seeing this, all the trainers' faces were stunned and dazed, as if they had witnessed something unbelievable. The trainers from the Bald Eagle Federation, in particular, had gloomy expressions, as if shrouded in a dark cloud. What's going on? What on earth is going on? Why did the Ocean Temple suddenly disappear? A trainer named Tim roared, his face gradually becoming frantic. But the people around him were also bewildered, not knowing how to respond. Shortly after the disappearance of the Sea Temple, the entirety of Atlantis, as if having fulfilled its mission, began to disintegrate. The mysterious power that enveloped Atlantis slowly vanished. Without its protective shield, countless waters rushed into Atlantis with a frenzy. Under the horrified gaze of countless trainers, the torrent surged, gradually submerging the entire city, repeating the scenes of the past. Countless ancient buildings and modeled murals were ripped apart by the terrifying flood. Rumble. The icy waters surged back, carrying the terrifying weight of the ocean, sweeping towards the group. Gazing at the devastating scene before them and the unexplored ruins behind them, everyone's faces were filled with resignation. But after a brief moment of deliberation, they were forced to retrieve their diving equipment and begin their escape from Atlantis. After leaving the confines of Atlantis, everyone looked at the flooded and destroyed ancient city with a look of relief on their faces, a feeling of having survived a catastrophe. Meanwhile, the vanished Sea Temple was rapidly advancing towards some unknown region. After Lu Feng entered the Sea Temple, he felt as if the entire temple had suddenly awakened. A heavy pressure descended from the temple, crushing down towards Lu Feng's position. If it weren't for the fragment of the bright blue gem, which emitted a dazzling light in time, helping Lu Feng to withstand the heavy pressure, Lu Feng would probably not be able to stand so easily in the Sea Temple at this moment. Looking at the somewhat unusual welcome ceremony before him, Lu Feng couldn't help but grumble. As expected, all those cute-looking Pokémon have hearts that are black when you cut them open. Manaphy, the legendary Pokémon, hailed as the Prince of the Sea, actually has a trap in his house. How the world has degenerated, how people's hearts have changed. Swampert and Gardevoir, standing nearby, couldn't help but twitch their faces upon hearing Lu Feng's words. They couldn't help but cover their faces with their hands, pretending not to recognize Lu Feng. Bang! Soon after, a crashing sound echoed, and the ocean temple seemed to fall somewhere. After a brief tremor, it came to a complete stop. Seeing the ocean temple come, Lu Feng, Swampert and Gardevoir began to explore the passageways within. The entire ocean temple was incredibly magnificent, its interior vast, dotted with statues of Manaphy. But there was no sign of life, as if it had fallen into dead silence. Lu Feng knew that perhaps Manaphy's departure had finally brought the ocean temple to a state of silence. After a brief moment of contemplation, he suppressed his thoughts and continued along the passage. A moment later, as they continued to advance, they gradually arrived at a remarkable place. Gazing at the blue palace before him, Lu Feng's eyes were filled with shock, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "This is truly incredible." As expected of the god of Py, his family is so wealthy. Before him appeared a vast palace constructed entirely of water gems. Each water gem within this palace imbued it with a rich and powerful water energy, its quality incomparable to ordinary water gems. Swampert, sensing this overwhelming water energy, couldn't help but take a deep breath, as if resonating with the current, reaching an uncharted realm. Observing the azure energy swirling around him, flowing freely, Lu Feng seemed to recall something and quickly threw out Eevee's Pokeball. Eevee emerged from its Pokeball, curiously surveying its surroundings, a puzzled expression on its face. "Eevee, try to sense the water energy around here and see if you can gain any insights." Lu Feng looked at Eevee expectantly, a warm expression on his face. Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, Eevee nodded and began to resonate with the water energy in the room. After a while, a turquoise light emanated from Eevee's body, making it seem as if it had merged with the water flow. When it opened its eyes again, a look of surprise crossed its face, as if it had gained something. Lu Feng glanced at Eevee and asked hopefully, "Eevee, have you gained anything?" Eevee nodded at Lu Feng's words and called out softly, "Eevee, show me the skills you've learned." Lu Feng said softly to Eevee. Eevee silently walked in front of Lu Feng, and balls of water emanated from its body, sending them flying towards the water gem. The once solid water gem wall gradually developed a dent, gleaming with a shimmering azure light. Lu Feng nodded slightly at the sight before him, his expression calm. "Sure enough, it's a living bubble." At that moment, the previously silent Swampert suddenly opened its eyes and roared loudly. "Swampert!" With its voice, the entire water gem room shook involuntarily. A stream of incredibly pure water energy converged towards Swampert's location, plunging directly into its body. Then, Swampert's aura surged, its strength rapidly increasing. In just a few breaths, it soared from level 52 to level 59. If it weren't for some kind of restriction, Swampert would have directly entered the realm of a celestial king. Sensing the changes within itself, Swampert couldn't help but roar, looking at Lu Feng with joy. With the help of wave guidance, Lu Feng sensed the changes in Swampert and said to it with satisfaction, "Congratulations, Swampert." Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, Swampert scratched its head, looking embarrassed. Suddenly, as if sensing something, the Greek letter Alpha symbol gradually appeared on its body, and its aura grew deeper. Following the guidance of its mind, it looked toward the back of the room, its face showing an anxious expression. Seeing Swampert's changes and the eagerness on its face, Lu Feng raised a brow, lost in thought. After selecting several ancient water gems, each imbued with incredible power, he and his Pokémon left the room of water gems and continued their journey deeper into the room. After walking for an indefinite amount of time, Lu Feng and his companions reached a fork in the road, revealing two passages. One of the passages resembled a natural cave, rather than a temple. It was as if the temple had landed somewhere and connected to an ancient cave. Another passage was composed entirely of water energy, imbued with psychic energy. Lu Feng pondered for a moment, then saw Swampert staring intently at the cave passage, an expression of immense longing on his face. A decision suddenly dawned on him. He then led his Pokémon into the cavernous passage. Half an hour later, they reached the end of the passage, arriving at the deepest part of the cave. This innermost part of the cavern was shrouded in a vast expanse of white mist, obscuring all vision. Fortunately, Lu Feng had Articuno use Wind Rise, gradually dispersing the mist. Then, a pristine pool appeared before them, reflecting azure ripples, emitting an ancient aura and powerful energy. As if sensing a unique vibration, the brilliant blue orb fragment in Lu Feng's hand began to glow, resonating with the pool. He seemed to hear a whale's cry, though it was somewhat ambiguous. Could this be the underwater cave where Kyogre lives? Lu Feng murmured softly, observing the lingering Greek letter Alpha symbol on the edge of the pool. I never thought this ocean temple could lead us to Kyogre's home. At that moment, a pained expression suddenly crossed Swampert's face, and the Greek letter Alpha symbol on its body flickered continuously. Lu Feng's Pokémon noticed Swampert's change and expressed concern. After using wave power to detect it, Lu Feng gradually breathed a sigh of relief and signaled Swampert to move freely. Swampert gave Lu Feng a hard look, then, receiving his permission, plunged into the pool. As Swampert entered, the entire pool seemed to undergo a chemical reaction, its hidden energy continuously pouring into its body. Aided by this accumulated power, Swampert gained a profound understanding of numerous water-based abilities, and its understanding of the origin waves deepened. The entire pool changed dramatically. The water level began to drop rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, more than half of it disappeared. Lu Feng looked at Swampert, who was still comprehending, and shook his head. After some thought, he took the rest of the Pokémon and returned to the fork in the road. Chapter 111 The Sage of the Sea. Gazing at another passageway that appeared before him, Lu Feng and his Pokémon stepped into it. Following the passage's guidance, they continued forward. Through the power of the wave guide, he could clearly sense that a powerful supernatural force was gathering within the passageway, forcibly solidifying the surrounding water energy. Through the ripples that rose from the passageway, they could clearly see the deep sea, the boundless depths of the ocean floor. A look of shock crossed their faces, awestruck and filled with awe. After walking for an indeterminate amount of time, Lu Feng saw an immense underwater space. This underwater space was unlike the caverns they had just entered, it felt more vibrant. As they continued deeper, the environment of this space slowly unfolded before them. Vegetation flourished, lush greenery flourished, and red flowers and green leaves intertwined, revealing a vibrant scene. Gyarados, Gardevoir, as if sensing something, wore a solemn expression. It looked at Lu Feng and spoke in a clear voice. Upon hearing Gardevoir's warning, Lu Feng released his wave power, spreading it all around. He could sense a powerful life force within the space, along with numerous life auras. The owner of that life force, as if aware of their arrival, began rapidly approaching. 10 minutes later, a look of astonishment crossed Lu Feng's face as he watched the numerous figures appear before him. They were actually a group of wild Pokémon. Furthermore, Lu Feng could sense the powerful life force emanating from them. This indicated that these wild Pokémon were undoubtedly exceptionally powerful. Judging from their auras, even the weakest possessed gym-level strength, while the strongest, the Pokémon standing in the front, emanated a quasi-king-level aura. This Pokémon was completely pink, bipedal, with an orange and white umbrella-like structure around its neck. Atop its head rested a crown of shells, nestled within a bright red gem. Its eyes shone with wisdom. Slowking, Lu Feng whispered, gazing at the Pokémon before him. Looking at the bipedal Pokémon before him, Lu Feng knew clearly that this was Slowking, known as the Sage of the Sea. After hearing Lu Feng's words, the Slowking stared intently at him, a look of deep confusion on its face. From Lu Feng, Slowking sensed an aura of profound awe. This aura was incredibly familiar, connected to the deity its clan had worshipped for generations. However, it was somewhat baffled by the fact that Lu Feng's aura was tinged with a certain sinister power. Slowking pondered in a human-like manner, while the numerous water-type Pokémon behind it gazed at Lu Feng with curiosity. After a long moment, the Slowking, as if remembering something, took on a complex expression, its eyes growing complex, its face growing heavy. After a brief moment of deliberation, Slowking reached a decision, growling to the Pokémon behind it. Upon hearing Slowking's command, numerous wild Pokémon instantly stiffened, roaring at Lu Feng and adopting attacking stances. Instantly, the atmosphere in the entire space froze. Lu Feng stared at Slowking and the surrounding wild Pokémon in confusion, wondering what had happened to them and why they were displaying such hostility. But he didn't have much time to ponder the situation. Led by Slowking, the wild Pokémon launched a direct attack on Lu Feng and his group. Powerful moves rained down like rain, showering down on Lu Feng's position. Gardevoir. Prepare for battle, Lu Feng said helplessly, gazing at the numerous wild Pokémon before him. Gardevoir nodded at Lu Feng, looking cautiously at the other Pokémon before him. With Gardevoir's help, Lu Feng moved to a relatively distant spot, avoiding any splash damage. After all, he didn't have ashes in human physical fitness, capable of withstanding the damage from Pokémon's abilities. Psychic, Lu Feng pondered for a moment before whispering to Gardevoir. As Lu Feng's voice sank, Gardevoir erupted with a powerful psychic force, enveloping the wild Pokémon, blocking its path. A dazzling blue light descended directly upon Slowking and the other Pokémon, immobilizing them with a massive binding force. Uneasy expressions crossed the bound Pokémon's faces, and they whimpered. Under the psychic attack, the gym-level Pokémon showed pained expressions and were sent flying backwards. Only the powerful Slowking, relying on its own strength, forcibly broke free from Gardevoir's psychic restraints. A brilliant blue light suddenly surged from the shell crown on its head, and a powerful psychic wave erupted from its forehead. This was a psychic-type move, Mind Hammer. Lu Feng sensed the immense power contained within the attack, his brow furrowing. After a moment's reflection, he calmly addressed Gardevoir. Gardevoir, hold, Gardevoir. Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, Gardevoir used its hold skill, successfully blocking the Mind Hammer's attack. Slowking, seeing its attack blocked, expressed disappointment, but continued its assault on Gardevoir. Condensing water energy within itself, it unleashed its surf skill, sending a massive wave surging towards Gardevoir with immense force. The sound was immense and the power was astonishing. Gardevoir, get out of the way, look for an opportunity, use your magic leaf special. Lu Feng observed the battle before him, his gaze as calm as water, his voice calm. Following his command, Gardevoir used teleportation to evade Slowking's attacks, searching for an opening to attack. A moment later, Gardevoir, taking advantage of Slowking's moment to catch its breath, unleashed its magic leaf attack. Emerald green leaves, radiating a sharp aura, flew straight towards Slowking. Observing the blades, which flew like blades, Slowking's expression darkened. A radiance emanated from his body, creating a transparent wall of light in front of him, blocking the attack. Seizing Slowking's opportunity to block, Gardevoir dodged behind him, closing in on him and unleashing a powerful 100,000-volt attack. Golden lightning roared through the air, flashing with dazzling brilliance and carrying a terrifying aura of destruction, striking Slowking directly. Boom! Adieu! Under the 100,000-volt attack, Slowking's face was itched with pain, and he let out a scream of pain. His aura gradually weakened, as if he had sustained considerable damage. Lu Feng watched the scene unfold before him and quickly addressed Gardevoir. Full power, 100,000 volts. Gardevoir. Upon hearing Lu Feng's command, Gardevoir cried out in a high-pitched voice. An intense golden lightning erupted from its body, launching a new attack towards Slowking. Slowking sensed the incoming attack and attempted to use teleport to evade, but the arcs of electricity arcing from its body interrupted its attack, preventing it from dodging. That's the paralysis effect triggering. Lu Feng observed the arcs of electricity flashing across Slowking. A look of realization crossing his face. Instantly, 100,000 volts, like thunderbolts from the heavens, descended directly upon Slowking. Under the 100,000 volts, Slowking suffered double the damage of an electric skill, and like a kite with its string cut, it plummeted to the ground, losing its last remaining fighting ability. Lu Feng looked at the Pokémon around him, shook his head, and then used Viridian's power to heal their injuries. After recovering from their injuries, the wild Pokémon stared at Lu Feng for a long, complex look, their expressions extremely subtle. Through his Viridian power, Lu Feng finally understood the reason behind their attack. It turned out that some evil-smelling item Lu Feng was carrying had alerted a Pokémon that had long inhabited this area. To avoid danger, they had been forced to attack him. Hearing this, he slowly fumbled around and pulled out a pitch-black feather. Suddenly, a sudden realization dawned on him. I didn't expect this silver feather would be the culprit, Lu Feng said, gazing at the shimmering black feather in his hand with a wry smile. Slowking's face faltered as he gazed at the tainted silver feather in Lu Feng's hand, his expression fading. Then, he gazed deeply into Lu Feng's heart for a long time, using his psychic powers to sense his inner thoughts, and a sudden realization dawned on him. Yado, the Daewon called out to Lu Feng, asking him to follow his instructions and walk in a certain direction. After hearing what the Daewon said, Lu Feng was stunned for a moment and was slightly dazed. After recovering, Lu Feng quickly caught up with the Daewang's pace, following its figure and moving forward. Not long after, Lu Feng came to a secluded area. The walls around here were covered with murals, and there was a shrine in the center. Lu Feng looked at the mural carefully, and after discovering the information recorded on the mural, his face showed a shocked expression. Chapter 112, Ocean Bells and Heart Drops. Lu Feng stared at the mural before him, stunned for a long moment. After regaining his composure, he couldn't help but exclaim, as expected of the most skilled legendary Pokémon, their friendship skills are simply amazing. The mural before Lu Feng depicted 3 Pokémon. 1. A large, silver-white bird, was none other than the incredibly familiar Lugia, the deity worshipped by the Slowking clan of this region for generations. The other 2 Pokémon shared the same appearance, but their colors differed. One was red and white, while the other was blue and white. Their bird-like forms possessed streamlined bodies and glass-like feathers, with wings resembling jet wings and legs resembling fish fins. A triangular symbol adorned their chests. These were none other than Latius and Latius, the guardians of the water city. From the mural's message, Lu Feng gradually understood that this underwater space before him had been created by the combined efforts of Lugia and the water city siblings. From this ancient mural, Lu Feng could still sense the terrifying energy fluctuations left behind by these 3 legendary Pokémon. After a moment's deliberation, he turned his gaze to Gardevoir beside him and released Eevee from its Pokéball. Gardevoir and Eevee, see if you can comprehend anything from the lingering psychic aura within this mural. Lu Feng's eyes gleamed, his face filled with immense anticipation as he spoke softly to them. Gardevoir, Gardevoir and Eevee nodded slowly at Lu Feng's words, beginning to sense the lingering psychic energy within the mural, entering a state of immersion. Then, Slowking approached Lu Feng and, while he was perplexed, pulled him toward the central shrine. Slowking bowed reverently toward the shrine, chanting a strange musical note, seemingly speaking something, as if performing some special ritual. Lu Feng watched Slowking's movements with some bewilderment, but he didn't interrupt. He simply stood aside, quietly observing his actions. After a moment, as if triggered by Slowking's ritual, the shrine began to emit a dazzling light, permeated by an aura of profound antiquity. The entire underwater space shook violently. The surrounding wild Pokémon, sensing the intense tremors, showed no signs of panic, but instead a hint of fervor. They gradually settled into their designated positions and began to growl softly, as if playing a strange melody. Although these Pokémon were not of the same species, and their voices were somewhat uneven, driven by the ritual, the melody they played felt seamless. It seemed to reach deep into the heart, touching the soul. Driven by this inexplicable rhythm, Lu Feng felt the wave power within him become increasingly active, rapidly increasing in strength, advancing from intermediate to advanced levels. The entire ceremony lasted about a day. Although there was no light or darkness in this underwater space, Lu Feng could tell the passage of time by looking at his watch. Slowly, the ceremony finally ceased. The surrounding wild Pokémon left the shrine one after another, slowly returning to their respective habitats. Slowking, a look of deep fatigue on his face, slowly approached Lu Feng, pointed in the direction of the shrine, and whispered, "You do." Hearing Slowking's words, Lu Feng suddenly looked towards the shrine, then pointed at himself and asked, "Are you asking me to go to the shrine and get something?" Slowking grinned, revealing his 2 large front teeth, and nodded firmly at Lu Feng. Lu Feng stared at Slowking for a long moment, then smiled as well. "I see. Thank you so much, Slowking." With that, he slowly walked towards the shrine. As he continued forward, Lu Feng seemed to sense some unknown change taking place within himself, his spirits growing more vibrant. "Is this the sea bell?" Lu Feng asked uncertainly as he reached the shrine, gazing at the bell resting quietly within. The bell was extremely ancient, its aura shimmering with a mottled aura. The gentle breeze rustled it, producing a soothing, calming melody. The sound was remarkably melodious and clear, imbued with an inexplicable power that soothed the mind's wandering thoughts. This sea bell, like the transparent bell, was crafted by ancient humans to honor Lugia and Hoenn. If Lu Feng remembered correctly, in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, this sea bell could be used to journey to the depths of the Whirlpool Islands or the Sea Corridorless of the Hoenn region, summoning Lugia, the god of the sea. Lu Feng's breath quickened at the thought, a longing expression crossing his face. He carefully removed the sea bell, holding it in his hands and examining it closely. As if sensing the same vibrations emanating from Lu Feng, the bell rang automatically without wind, emitting a clear, melodious melody. However, This melody was tinged with a deep sorrow that inevitably affected those who heard it, and a sadness crossed their faces. Is it sensing the evil aura of the silver wing? Lu Feng suppressed the sadness that welled up in his heart, looking at the sea bell before him with a soft sigh. Then, Lu Feng carefully placed the sea bell in his backpack and turned his attention to another object in the shrine. This object, resembling an azure round bead, shone with a brilliant light and was extremely beautiful. Lu Feng studied the bead quietly, knowing full well that this azure round bead was the exclusive item for Latius and Latius, the heart drop. According to legend, the heart drop was formed from the soul of either Latius or Latius. Lu Feng stared at the heart drop before him for a long moment, then carefully retrieved the legendary item. He gazed at the heart drop in his hand, then slowly turned to look at Gardevoir before slowly returning the way he'd come. After he removed the two legendary items, the ancient shrine gradually regained its composure, a profound silence descending. Slowking, watching the scene unfold, his wise eyes filled with joy, his weary body relaxed. Lu Feng approached it, gazing at the adorable Slowking, and solemnly addressed it, "Slowking, thank you very much for your trust." Slowking waved at Lu Feng, gently shaking his head, his expression returning to its composure. Lu Feng pondered for a moment, then pulled out some psychic and water energy cubes from his backpack and handed them to Slowking. Slowking smelled the aroma of the energy cube, and his expression froze for a moment. He silently took the cube and carefully savored it. After consuming the cube, a delighted expression spread across his face, and he smiled at Lu Feng in a human-like manner. Seeing this, Lu Feng took out some more energy cubes and handed them to Slowking. Slowking took the cubes and left with a look of satisfaction, occasionally letting out a laugh. Watching Slowking's retreating figure, Lu Feng slowly retracted his gaze and returned to Gardevoir and Eevee. Gardevoir's psychic energy surged ever more terrifyingly, as if it had gained insights from the mural. Eevee, too, had gained considerable insights, a characteristic blue glow of psychic properties emanating from its body, and its aura gradually fluctuated. Time slowly slipped by, and in the blink of an eye, another day had passed. After an unknown amount of time, Eevee slowly opened its eyes, its brown pupils gleaming with excitement. It gazed at Lu Feng, who was waiting nearby, and quickly trotted over, nudging Lu Feng's trouser leg with the fur on its neck. Lu Feng rubbed Eevee's petite frame with his hands and, taking the opportunity to use his detect skill to detect any changes in Eevee's condition, discovered a psychic-type move called Hua Hua Aura in Eevee's skill list. A look of satisfaction crossed his face as he casually pulled out an energy cube and handed it directly to Eevee. At that moment, a powerful surge of psychic energy filled the air, instantly capturing Lu Feng's attention and causing him to pause in his feeding of the little Eevee. Gardevoir, standing in front of the mural, slowly opened its eyes, gathered its psychic energy, and slowly returned to Lu Feng's side. After some exploration, Lu Feng sensed that Gardevoir, with the help of the mural, had learned moves such as Seal, Power Swap, Defense Swap, Trick Space, and Spirit Field, significantly improving its strength. After a brief moment of reflection, Lu Feng took out the Ocean Bell and handed it to Gardevoir, hoping that the remaining power in the Ocean Bell would bring corresponding assistance to Gardevoir. Then, after seeing that there was nothing left around, he took Gardevoir and Eevee and turned back to the passage they had come from. Chapter 113 Leaving the Sea Temple. Time flies, the world changes, and 5 days pass in a flash. Inside the Ocean Temple, Lu Feng summoned all of his Pokémon. After 5 days of digesting his knowledge and leveraging the numerous resources within, his Pokémon made significant progress. Gardevoir's power soared, reaching level 59, while Eevee's also soared from normal to elite, poised to break through to gym level. However, Lu Feng was troubled by the fact that Gardevoir and Swampert seemed to be limited. No matter how much he used legendary resources, they couldn't break through from the level of near king to king. After pondering for a long time, Lu Feng could not come up with a solution. He sighed helplessly, burying his doubts in his heart, hoping to seek professional advice when he returned to the Pokémon world. Looking at his Pokémon ready to go, Lu Feng decided to leave the Ocean Temple. After all, 5 days had already passed. Because of his Deep Sea Temple, he had no idea what was happening outside, so he was prepared for any unexpected events. Lu Feng decided to leave the temple and return to Daxia. Then, a serious question confronted Lu Feng. He was in the depths of the ocean, and the diving equipment he carried was no match for the immense pressure. Without the protection of the temple, he wouldn't have been able to remain there for so long. The thought of this gave Lu Feng a headache, and he began to think about how to return. After a long moment, Gardevoir and the other Pokémon looked at Lu Feng, a man in deep thought, and exchanged glances. Lu Feng felt his Pokémon's gazes fixed on him, and he couldn't help but smile wryly. Gardevoir, upon hearing Lu Feng's words, looked at him with a puzzled expression. Upon hearing Gardevoir's words, Lu Feng was struck by lightning, completely frozen in place. When he recovered, a look of gratitude crossed his face, and he said to Gardevoir, thank you for reminding me. I'd have forgotten I could have asked the Ocean Temple to take us back. Everyone, look around. There aren't any traps in the Ocean Temple, Lu Feng said with a smile, looking at his Pokémon. The Pokémon nodded at Lu Feng's words and began to search silently within the Ocean Temple. After an unknown amount of time, Jengar seemed to have discovered something. It approached Lu Feng, tugged at his sleeve, and pointed to a certain spot. Kauji, Jengar shouted with a mischievous grin. Lu Feng followed Jengar's lead and slowly walked towards it, eventually arriving at a wall. Lu Feng looked around at the empty space, a bewildered expression on his face. He looked directly at Jengar with a questioning look. Sensing the confusion in Lu Feng's eyes, Jengar quickly dodged and disappeared into the wall. A moment later, a heavy sound echoed, as if some mechanism had been triggered. The other Pokémon, hearing the sudden noise, flocked to Lu Feng, curiously observing the slowly opening wall. Beyond the wall, they saw a hidden space. If it weren't for Jengar's ability to navigate shadows, Lu Feng wouldn't have guessed there was a secret. He then carefully surveyed the hidden space, finding no traps, and slowly entered. This hidden space seemed to be where Manaphy kept his collection, with various items neatly arranged on either side. When he reached the deepest point and saw the items within, Lu Feng was momentarily stunned. The table was filled with precious items, such as the King's Certificate, Dragon Scale, Dragon Fang, Deep Sea Fang, and countless other items and secret treasures, surrounded by numerous high-quality evolution stones. Looking at the dazzling array of items, and thinking of the long-gone Manaphy, a strange smile gradually spread across Lu Feng's face. He enlisted the help of his Pokémon to help him pack up the items. Since Manaphy wasn't coming back, he reluctantly inherited Manaphy's Aunt Huabai, crossed out, presumably inheriting the treasures Manaphy left behind. That shouldn't be too much, right? Lu Feng pondered this, his hands gathering more quickly. If Manaphy knew what Lu Feng was thinking, she'd probably be furious and point at him, saying, MMP, damn it. You ransacked my house. Do I even need to thank you? Half an hour later, after considerable effort, he and his Pokémon finally collected all the items they found attractive within the space. The remaining items within the space were already scarce. If Lu Feng's backpack hadn't run out of space, and Jengar's shadow space hadn't been completely filled, it's likely that none of Manaphy's remaining treasures would have remained. Then, panting, Lu Feng sat down on the ground, a goofy grin on his face, and he rested quietly. Another hour later, after regaining his strength, Lu Feng, using wave power to explore, finally found the key to the mechanism controlling the Ocean Temple. It was a round, azure bead, as if imbued with the power of the ocean. Lu Feng gently activated the bead with wave power, and with a heavy sound, the entire Ocean Temple shook violently again, beginning to move away from its current location, heading further away from the deep sea. Furthermore, because it was controlled by the hub, the entire Ocean Temple gradually faded, becoming a transparent object, rapidly advancing, evading all sonic detection. The wave surged, the currents twisted. Following the current, the Ocean Temple cut through the water on either side, calming the surging waves and surging directly onto the surface. Instantly, a massive wave erupted, startling the surrounding water Pokémon. Lu Feng carefully surveyed the surroundings through a monitoring device within the temple and discovered that the entire temple was currently located near the Strait of Gibraltar. After some deliberation, he continued to control the Ocean Temple, diving beneath the surface and heading west. After 2 days of sailing, Lu Feng finally arrived near the East China Sea of Daxia. He docked the Ocean Temple on a secluded island in the East China Sea and slowly left with his Pokémon. Just after they left the Sea Temple, the entire structure, as if having completed its mission, sank back into the sea, vanishing. This left Lu Feng feeling disappointed. He had thought he'd secured a hidden sea base. Then, he shook his head, dispelling all thoughts. He gazed at the looming Great Xia landmass, pondered for a moment, then pulled out his phone. Seeing its battery was running low, he quickly called Wu Feng. Shortly after, a helicopter flew out of Great Xia and landed on the uninhabited island in the East China Sea. It picked up Lu Feng and headed towards the imperial capital. 4 hours later, Lu Feng reappeared at the headquarters of the Great Xia Elf Alliance. Wu Feng breathed a sigh of relief, his tense demeanor gradually relaxing as he watched him, seemingly rejuvenated. "You're finally back. If you hadn't come back, I'd have to pay your family for the compensation," Wu Feng scolded with a smile, patting him firmly on the shoulder. He didn't ask Lu Feng where he'd been these past few days. Some things are known to everyone, and tacit understanding is sufficient. Lu Feng's face was filled with resignation, and he said, in a cryptic way, "Something went wrong, but I'm back at last." Suddenly, as if remembering something, Wu Feng turned back to his office, pulled out a large cardboard box, and handed it to Lu Feng. Lu Feng, using his waveguide power, sensed a familiar vibration emanating from the box, and a smile crossed his face. He glanced at Wu Feng blankly, only to see Wu Feng looking back at him. "The contents of this box are what you need. We've worked so hard to gather them." Lu Feng nodded, thanked him, and slowly opened the box. Inside, he saw several different, colorful stones, each radiating a different light, each reflecting the other's beauty. These were the Super Evolution Stones. Lu Feng carefully counted the items and discovered that the box contained 5 megastones, along with 2 key stones. He was slightly moved. As expected of an official organization, they've managed to collect so many megastones in such a short time, Lu Feng said in a low voice, his eyes filled with relief. He examined them carefully and found that one of the 5 megastones was exactly what he needed, the megastone for Banjira. And the remaining 4 megastones? They were for Dinabut, Beedrill, Pidgeot, and Alorado. They didn't seem to match the Pokémon he had, which disappointed Lu Feng. He silently returned the megastones to the box, handed it to Wu Feng, and spoke to him pointedly. "President Wu, I'll just take this one. Please keep the rest safe. They'll be of great use in the future. Also, please treat your Pokémon well. Perhaps forming a bond with them will yield unexpected rewards." Wu Feng listened to his words, and although somewhat confused, he nodded firmly, knowing that Lu Feng's words must have a deeper meaning. Then, Lu Feng saw the black book in his backpack, and an idea struck him. He handed the black book to Wu Feng, asking him to find a language expert from Pharaoh to translate it, and then left the Pokémon Alliance headquarters. Chapter 114 Heading to Death Valley. The next day, the sky was clear and blue. After a brief rest in the hotel to recharge his batteries, Lu Feng slowly made his way back to the Great Xia Elf Alliance. When he arrived at the Elf Alliance headquarters, the pharaonic language expert Wu Feng had found for him was already waiting. "Excuse me, Professor Zhang," Lu Feng said modestly, looking at the gray-haired, energetic professor before him. "Let's begin." Professor Zhang nodded slightly, a warm smile on his face, and said to him with a cheerful smile. He took out a black book and his reading glasses, and began to compare word by word, silently translating. Lu Feng watched Professor Zhang, waiting quietly, his expression extremely solemn, not daring to make a sound. As time passed, 2 hours passed quickly. Professor Zhang slowly put down his reading glasses, picked up the paper in front of him, and handed it directly to Lu Feng. "Professor Zhang, thank you so much for your help this time." Looking at the tired old professor, Lu Feng said gratefully. Professor Zhang waved his hand, shook his head slightly at him, and said, "It's okay, I'm glad I can help you." He asked Lu Feng to take a look at the translated information first, and if he had any questions, he could ask him directly. Lu Feng heard it, picked up the paper in his hand, and looked at it carefully. After reading carefully, he found that the black book in front of him was actually called the Black Book of the Dead. He was a little stunned. If he hadn't remembered that he was on Blue Star, he would have thought he had run into the world of mummies. However, the Black Book of the Dead in front of him was not the same as the other Black Book of the Dead. This Black Book of the Dead recorded information about a legendary Pokémon that was worshipped by the Pharaoh Kingdom in ancient times. This Pokémon resembled a bat, its wings embellished with golden crescents, and a cross star of the same color suspended from the other forks. Its head was relatively small, supported by a vampire-like cape with a stand-up collar. The deep blue area above its head indicated the shifting constellations, and the center of its body held a light source. Reading this description, Lu Feng's mind suddenly conjured a picture. He knew clearly that the legendary Pokémon revered by the ancient pharaohs must be Lunala, the moon-calling beast. A thoughtful expression crossed Lu Feng's face. If Lunala had appeared, then Solgalea, the sun-eating beast, couldn't possibly not exist. Perhaps it was recorded in another related book and taken away by a trainer from the Bald Eagle Federation. Professor Zhang's precise translation revealed a crystal artifact left behind by Lunala and Solgalea somewhere in the Pharaohs. Looking at the description of the crystal item, he knew it must be the Z crystal. After a brief moment of reflection, Lu Feng checked the floating countdown and, realizing there were less than 10 days left, abandoned his plan to travel to Pharaoh's kingdom. He handed the Black Book of the Dead to Wu Feng, providing him with the details and instructing him to send someone to Pharaoh's kingdom to search for the Z crystal. Upon hearing the book's information regarding the Ulala region's Z moves, Wu Feng's face lit up with excitement. Remember, at that point in time, Z moves, unlike the unreleased Mega Evolutions, were already well known throughout the Pokémon world. However, due to their considerable difficulty in obtaining, most people had only heard of them, but had never seen them. By the way, Wu Feng suddenly said after calming himself down. We've roughly confirmed the location you asked us to help you find. Lu Feng jerked his head up and excitedly asked, Chairman Wu, where's this place? Wu Feng looked at the excited Lu Feng and was silent for a moment before slowly saying, Kunlun Mountain. Lu Feng listened to him, thought carefully, and asked uncertainly, Death Valley. Wu Feng nodded silently, then said, Lu Feng, although I don't know why you're looking for such a place, it's quite dangerous. I hope you'll think carefully before going. Lu Feng nodded deeply and said goodbye. That day, after obtaining the necessary documents, Lu Feng boarded a special helicopter and flew towards Death Valley. This time, Lu Feng traveled to Death Valley, hoping to find the area where Yveltal resided, hoping to find relevant items and resources for Bangila, thus furthering his original plan. Knowing that many legendary Pokémon had descended upon Blue Planet, he asked Wu Feng for help in locating the relevant location, but he never expected it to be in the Kunlun Mountains. Soon after, a helicopter landed at the base near Kunlun Mountains. After obtaining the necessary permission, Lu Feng, mounted on Charizard, slowly flew towards Death Valley. Following the flow of the Nalanglar River, Lu Feng continued upstream, steadily advancing towards the Nalanglar Gorge. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Feng gradually arrived near the Nalanglar Gorge. He sensed a unique aura within the gorge, and excitement filled his face. Initially, he was a little apprehensive, unsure if Nalanglar Gorge was where Yveltal had once resided, but after using the power of the wave guide to sense it, Lu Feng was instantly convinced. Charizard, fly to the vicinity of the canyon. Lu Feng surveyed the canyon before him, carefully searching for a landing spot, and commanded Charizard to descend. Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, Charizard flapped its wings, growled, and carried Lu Feng to the designated location. Seeing the lush greenery surrounding him, yet the canyon seemed devoid of life, Lu Feng's expression darkened. He glanced solemnly ahead. After a moment's deliberation, he tossed out Bangila's Pokeball and fixed his gaze on it. Bangila, can you sense the location of the dark energy affecting this canyon? Bangila, upon hearing this, glanced solemnly at the canyon before him. Through the resonance of its own attributes, it gradually detected something different. It turned, nodded at Lu Feng, and growled. Hearing Bangila's voice, Lu Feng knew it had sensed the location. Then, guided by its power, Lu Feng cautiously walked along the canyon path, heading deeper into the canyon. Because the surroundings were tainted with Yveltal's power, wild Pokémon were wary of the area and wouldn't stay, thus avoiding any unexpected battles. As they advanced, the surrounding landscape grew increasingly desolate. All the vegetation and trees, as if drained of their vitality, withered and petrified. Lu Feng's rainbow feathers and other legendary items glowed faintly, helping him to resist the onslaught of Yveltal's lingering power. Time passed, and Lu Feng continued to advance, drawing closer to the source of the changes deep within the canyon. After over an hour and much arduous effort, Lu Feng finally reached the deepest part of the canyon with Bangila. At the deepest point of the canyon, Lu Feng discovered a crystal-clear, rippling lake, surrounded by towering, snow-capped mountains. Protected by these mountains, the lake resembled a natural gem, quietly embedded within the Kunlun Mountains. If it weren't for the strange aura that occasionally emanated from the lake, constantly devouring the vitality of the surrounding plants and flowers, gradually turning the surrounding area into a state of petrification, this place would surely be a treasure trove of beautiful scenery. Lu Feng frowned as he gazed at the lake before him, falling silent. Although he knew the lake held a remnant of Yveltal's presence, He felt helpless. He had no idea how to approach the lake and retrieve the contents from its depths. He pondered slowly, and after a long moment, a flash of inspiration struck his mind, and the confusion in his eyes gradually faded. Feng took out Swampert's Pokeball and sent out his own Swampert. He looked at Swampert, then pointed at the lake before him, saying earnestly, "Swampert, use Tidal Swirl to sweep whatever's on the lake's bottom to the shore. Be careful not to get splashed by the water, Swampert." Swampert nodded after hearing Feng's words and began to use Tidal Swirl, causing the entire lake to sway. Under the influence of Tidal Swirl, the objects in the lake were slowly swept to the shore, freed from the lake's confines. Feng watched the objects continuously appear, slowly waiting. After more than 10 minutes, a somewhat broken cocoon-like object washed up on the shore. Feng's face lit up as he looked at the cocoon-like object. He quickly stopped Swampert and instructed it to use Water Wave to sweep the cocoon-like object away from the lake. He took out a fragment of the vermilion orb, which exuded a fiery aura, and handed it directly to Bangila, instructing it on the necessary precautions. After Feng finished speaking, Bangila nodded solemnly and slowly walked towards the cocoon-like object. Chapter 115 Return to the Elf World. Time slowly slipped by. 7 or 8 days had already passed since Bangila's silence that day. Feng stared at the motionless Bangila, his face filled with anxiety. If not for the lingering aura of Bangila, Feng would have interrupted Bangila's meditation. Evie called softly, looking at Feng, whose face was filled with annoyance. Feng glanced at the Eevee before him and stroked its soft fur, thoroughly enjoying the pleasure of petting a cat. As he teased Eevee, Feng's irritation gradually subsided, and he quietly waited. After these few days of training with Eevee, Eevee had already mastered its stand skills, as well as several other unique moves it had yet to master, showing tremendous progress. Once Eevee had mastered its stand moves with ease, Feng would attempt to move on to the next step of training. Feng glanced at the floating countdown, seeing only less than 8 hours remaining, and sighed. He silently made a decision: if Bangila didn't awaken in a few hours, Feng would retrieve it into its Pokeball and interrupt its enlightenment. 4 hours later, the midday sun blazed down across the entire Nalangel Canyon, gradually raising the temperature within the desolate canyon. Just then, the ground suddenly shook, instantly startling Feng. Roar! Bangila, whose eyes had been tightly closed, suddenly opened them and roared at the sky. The sound, like a resounding bell, shook the surrounding ground and gradually spread outward, alerting many of the wild Pokémon lingering on the outskirts. Bangila slowly approached Feng's position, carrying an aura of immense violence. In its path, the flowers, plants, and trees gradually withered and yellowed, as if their life force had been absorbed. It came to a point not far from Feng's position and stopped, pausing in place, no longer moving forward. Feng gazed at Bangila before him and could sense a terrifying aura emanating from it, an extremely oppressive aura, the utter fear of death itself. Observing the scene Bangila's movement created, Feng knew it had succeeded. While the power of the desolate realm wasn't particularly potent at the moment, it would undoubtedly become its trump card over time. He regained his composure slightly and asked Bangila earnestly, "Bangila, how are you feeling now?" Bangila's eyes blazed red upon hearing Feng's words, and he roared, seemingly unable to control the energy within him. Feng, upon hearing Bangila's voice, glanced at her, his brow furrowing slightly. He hadn't expected that comprehending of Eltil's power would cause Bangila's own energy to spiral out of control. After a brief moment of thought, Feng raised his head and said to Bangila, "Bangila, in the next period of time, what you need to do is to train your control ability and control this powerful energy." Bangila fell silent after hearing Feng's words, and then nodded at him. Then, Feng took out Bangila's Pokeball and slowly put it back. After seeing that his purpose of coming to Death Valley had been achieved, Feng took out Charizard's Pokeball and quickly flew back to the location of the outpost. At the same time, as Feng entered Death Valley, the Pokemon world also underwent a major change. Kanto region, Viridian Gym Xiaomao looked at the scene before him, his face grim. He saw that all his Pokemon had lost their combat ability and fell to the hands of the mysterious Pokemon opposite. Staring at the steel-encased Pokemon before him, Xiaomao felt a surge of helplessness, unable to resist questioning, "What kind of Pokemon is this? Why is it so strong?" Sakaki, standing across from him, smiled brightly upon hearing Xiaomao's question, but didn't respond. What he didn't notice was that Mewtwo, restrained by the steel armor, looked even more bewildered after hearing Xiaomeo's words and recalling the events of the past few days. Who am I? A sudden thought struck Mutuo, upon hearing Xiaomeo's words. Why am I fighting so desperately? What is the meaning of my birth? It found that after helping Team Rocket, its confusion had not only not been resolved, but had only deepened. Not long after the gym match concluded, Mutuo returned to Team Rocket's base with Sakaki, gazing at the machines that bound it. Mutuo finally couldn't help but ask his own question, what is the meaning of my life? At this moment, a heavy footsteps sounded, and Sakaki's figure slowly appeared in front of Mutuo. He looked at Mutuo in the machine and said indifferently, you are a Pokémon, and every Pokémon is for humans to use, you are no exception. After hearing what Sakaki said, Mutuo immediately raised his head, looked at Sakaki indifferently and asked, do you want me to fight for you, or fight for all of you humans? After hearing Mutuo's question, Sakaki showed an angry expression on his face. He pinched the iron railing beside him with his hand and said to Mutuo coldly, your life is given by humans, and you are born to fight for humans. Apart from that, what other value do you think you have? After hearing Sakaki's answer, Mutuo broke free from the machine that bound him and said in a low voice, what value do I have? What on earth was I born for? After hearing Mutuo's doubts, Sakaki showed an unhappy expression on his face. He looked at Mutuo directly and said, what on earth do you mean? Do you want to resist humans? He just pressed the mechanism directly, and Mutuo was firmly tied to the machine in place, tightly bound. After hearing Sakaki's question, Mutuo did not answer directly. Instead, he used his powerful superpowers to float in the air and looked at Sakaki for a while. Then, a powerful supernatural power suddenly erupted from its body, exploding in the dimly lit Team Rocket base. A terrifying wave of energy spread throughout the base, instantly destroying it. Boom! Black smoke billowed, and fireworks blazed. The entire hidden Team Rocket base was flattened to the ground by this tremendous explosion of supernatural power. Taking advantage of this moment, Mutuo burst out of the rocket base, transforming into a stream of light and soaring into the sky. Its steel armor continuously broke and shattered, beginning to disintegrate and shatter. Sakaki watched Mutuo escape from Team Rocket's base and brazenly destroy it. He flew into a rage, gritting his teeth and shouting, Mutuo, you're a Pokémon created by Team Rocket. Don't even think about escaping. Then, Sakaki addressed Manaji, who was standing beside him, order all Team Rocket members to keep an eye on Mutuo. I want them to know they can't escape Team Rocket's control. Yes, boss. Manaji, hearing the anger in Sakaki's tone, quickly declared. Then, Manaji left Sakaki's site and delivered Sakaki's orders to the various Team Rocket branches. Unbeknownst to Sakaki, Mutuo, having escaped Team Rocket's control, had returned directly to New Island. Standing in the sky, it gazed at the lifeless New Island and the shimmering blue sea nearby. Suddenly, it lost all purpose, its face filled with confusion. After a long moment, Mutuo suddenly raised its head, took in the surroundings, and a decision came to its mind. Just as Mutuo was making his decision, Feng, far away on Blue Star, suddenly heard a system notification chime, causing his expression to change. Ding. Conditions met. The legendary quest, Mutuo's counterattack, is about to begin. Please prepare accordingly to avoid missing the quest. Feng's face was filled with a complex expression as he watched the sudden notification. He hadn't expected Mutuo's counterattack to begin just as he was about to log into the Pokémon world. It truly caught him off guard. But after briefly recalling the relevant plot, Feng slowly breathed a sigh of relief, putting the matter to rest. Meanwhile, just as Feng had returned to the base, the system countdown had just reached 0. The cold, mechanical system notification chime echoed again, reverberating through the ears of the numerous Blue Star players, sending them into a frenzy. Ding. System update is finished, teleportation is starting, Blue Star players please be prepared. Ding. System update is finished, teleportation is starting, Blue Star players please be prepared. Ding. System update is finished, teleportation is starting, Blue Star players please be prepared. As these three prompt sounds rang out, countless lights suddenly rose up all over the world in Blue Star. Under the cover of this light, the figures of many trainers disappeared directly. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Machado reappears. With a burst of dazzling light, the figures of many players from Blue Star reappeared in the elf world. Lu Feng looked at the familiar scene before him and was about to leave this remote corner of Viridian City, but before he could move, a figure made of gray smoke and shadow appeared before him. Looking at Machado who appeared before him, Lu Feng suddenly fell silent, his face full of confusion. Machado looked at Lu Feng who suddenly appeared, and his face showed the same expression, just staring at Lu Feng silently. "Where have you been for the past month?" Suddenly, a disembodied voice reached Lu Feng's ears, causing him to raise his head and look around for the source of the voice. Finally, he turned his gaze to Machado and asked hesitantly, "Machado, are you speaking to me?" Machado's orange-red eyes flickered slightly, and he glanced at Lu Feng with annoyance before suddenly speaking, "Are there any other living beings here besides me, but you?" Lu Feng couldn't help but say to Machado, but the words faltered. Machado, hearing Lu Feng's sudden pause, understood what he was trying to say. He explained quietly, "Breaking through the legendary realm and completing a life-level leap naturally allows one to learn telepathy." Lu Feng's explanation was met with a look of sudden enlightenment, and he nodded slightly. Machado then stared at Lu Feng with a complicated expression and spoke again, "You haven't told me where you've been this past month." Lu Feng hesitated to speak, but ultimately chose silence. Watching Lu Feng lapse into silence, Machado's anger suddenly surged, his entire body trembling. Recalling the past month's experiences, he felt a sense of unease. When Lu Feng had just emerged from the Viridian Gym, Machado had planned to observe him for a while longer, testing him. Then, he would lead Lu Feng to face the three sacred beasts, and finally to Shining Mountain in search of the Hoenn. But who could have imagined? Lu Feng would vanish right under his nose. What a blast! No matter how hard Machado searched, he couldn't find Lu Feng. He had thought his mission, barely begun, had ended in vain. Fortunately, he had enough patience, waiting for Lu Feng for over a month before finally catching sight of him again. After a long moment, Machado gazed at the silent Lu Feng and sighed helplessly. He sensed several legendary auras emanating from Lu Feng, and couldn't help but give him a long look. Afterwards, seeing that his inquiry yielded no results, Machado stopped dwelling on the answer to his question and turned to Lu Feng, saying, "Trialist, prepare for the trial. I will lead you to find the three sacred beasts and begin your trials." After hearing Machado's words, Lu Feng raised his head, gave it a blank look, and said with a twitch of his lips, "So, after all this time, the trial of the Rainbow Warrior hasn't begun." Hearing this, Machado looked at Lu Feng with some surprise, nodded, and said, "Isn't this quite normal? I always need to know if you're qualified to participate in the trial first, so, am I qualified now?" Lu Feng said to Machado with some anticipation after hearing what it said. Machado curled his lips and said unhappily, "I guess so. I'm afraid if I don't start the trial, you'll disappear again." After hearing Machado's words, an embarrassed expression flashed across Lu Feng's face, and he was speechless for a long time. This is mainly a sudden incident," Lu Feng replied nervously after a long moment, gazing into Machado's orange-red eyes. Machado waved his hand, no longer questioning the issue, and was about to return to Lu Feng's shadow. But before he could, Lu Feng stopped him. He stared at him with a puzzled expression, his face filled with astonishment, unsure of what Lu Feng meant by this. Lu Feng pondered for a moment, then released Swampert and Gardevoir. He humbly asked Machado, "Machado, I wonder what happened to my Swampert and Gardevoir? Why have their strength suddenly stagnated?" Machado glanced at him in surprise, the orange-red hue in his eyes narrowing slightly. If he remembered correctly, these two Pokémon had only just reached the beginning of their near-king status a month ago. He had never expected that in just a month, their strength had risen to the peak of near-king status. Moreover, they were faintly imbued with the aura of other high-level legends, their life forms slowly shifting. Perhaps one day, they might even enter the realm of legend. Thinking of this possibility, Machado glanced at Lu Feng, intentionally or not. Then, slowly, it explained to Lu Feng, for a Pokémon at a quasi-king level to break through to the king level, they must comprehend the aura of nature. For a king to reach the champion level, they must comprehend the origin. Only by transforming the origin into the law can one become a legendary being. By concentrating the law into divine role, one achieves the status of a high legend. As Machado spoke, a longing expression gradually spread across his face, his eyes filled with desire. Lu Feng's explanation suddenly dawned on him. He looked at Swampert and Gardevoir inside. It turned out that Swampert and Gardevoir hadn't yet broken through to the king level because they hadn't comprehended the aura of the king. Seeing that Lu Feng had no further questions, my shadow vanished, disappearing into his shadow and gradually falling silent. Suddenly, a strange noise came from Lu Feng's backpack, instantly bringing him back to his senses. Watching the constantly vibrating backpack, Lu Feng slowly opened it, revealing Tajipi's Pokémon egg, now shimmering with light. Seeing this, Lu Feng knew Tajipi was about to hatch. He then ran to a nearby hotel and booked a room. He slowly unloaded the incubator and began preparing the necessary items, silently awaiting Tajipi's birth. A few minutes later, a cracking sound was heard, and several cracks appeared on the Pokémon egg. The egg shook continuously, as if Tajipi was struggling to break free. As Lu Feng and several other Pokémon watched, the Pokémon egg finally shattered. A small, egg-shaped Pokémon with a bright yellow head and limbs, a white body, and several triangular shapes appeared. Lu Feng looked at the Tajipi before him, his heart melting with cuteness, his face awash with joy. Chachibuyu Tajipi looked around carefully, then ran towards Lu Feng. However, running too fast, he stumbled and, somewhat frightened, curled up into an egg shape, rolling towards Lu Feng. Seeing Tajipi rolling towards him, Lu Feng quickly ran over, carefully catching it and wiping it down with a hot towel. Feeling it being caught, Tajipi slowly revealed its head and limbs, a smile spread across its face. Looking at Lu Feng, it happily called out, Chachibuya. Seeing Tajipi safe and sound, the surrounding Pokémon breathed a sigh of relief and came over to it, quietly gazing at the newborn. Tajipi looked at the Pokémon before him, their ferocious expressions streaking across their faces, and burst into tears. Lu Feng was scrambling for a moment, but only after retrieving a bottle of Moo Moo milk did Tajipi's sobs cease. Banjira and Charizard looked at the scene, sighed, and silently walked away from Tajipi, their faces filled with sorrow. They had never imagined they would one day be rejected by a new Pokémon. After finishing their Moo Moo milk, Tajipi seemed to feel sleepy and curled up into an egg shape, falling asleep in Lu Feng's arms. Looking at Tajipi in his arms, Lu Feng asked Gardevoir to help him tidy up the messy table. Then, carrying Tajipi to the bed, he slowly laid it down and covered it with the covers. Lu Feng then cast a detection skill towards Tajipi's location, scanning for information about it: name, Tajipi, gender, female sign, attribute, fairy, abilities, divine grace, moves with a higher chance of a chase effect appearing, super luck, attacks are more likely to hit the opponent's vital points, classification, pinball Pokémon, level 5, qualifications, gym, skills, cry, slap, angel's kiss, life drop, morning light, inherited. After seeing Tajipi's qualifications, Lu Feng's expression calmed down considerably. After a brief moment of reflection, he gave Tajipi the 2 silver crowns he had left over from a while ago. Under the influence of these silver crowns, Tajipi's qualifications increased significantly, directly from gym-level qualifications to king-level qualifications. Chapter 117 Searching for the 4 Heavenly Kings, Shiba. Over 2 hours later, Tajipi awoke from his slumber, rubbing his eyes with his short hands. He looked at Lu Feng, who was not far away, and called softly, Chachibuyi. Hearing Tajipi's call, Eevee trotted over to Tajipi and gently held Tajipi's hand with its paw pads. Tajipi, sensing the Eevee's kindness, shook his finger at it, and happily embraced it. Lu Feng watched the 2 playful creatures with a smile on his face. Then, as if remembering something, a troubled expression crossed his face. After some thought, Lu Feng decided to head towards Pallet Town to see if he could use his connections to temporarily deposit his Pokémon at Oak Lab. He then slowly collected a larger Pokémon, including Bangila, leaving only Tajipi and Eevee. At this point, Lu Feng had not yet captured Tajipi. He knew that if he captured Tajipi, his Pokémon slot would be overloaded, locking his Pokéballs and rendering them useless. To prevent any accidents, Lu Feng could only carry Tajipi and not capture him directly. Lu Feng checked out of the hotel with Tajipi and Eevee, then slowly walked towards Pallet Town. Along the way, Lu Feng encountered many trainers, who, upon seeing Lu Feng with Tajipi and Eevee, showed disdain. But moments later, they were all defeated by Eevee, their faces filled with doubt. Over an hour later, Lu Feng arrived at Pallet Town again. The quiet and pure town before him suddenly brightened his mood. Lu Feng glanced at the Oak Laboratory and slowly walked towards it. A few minutes later, Feng arrived outside Professor Oak's lab and rang the doorbell. Professor Oak's figure appeared on the display. Seeing that it was Feng, a look of surprise crossed his face, and he sent his assistant to escort him directly inside. "Professor Oak, long time no see," Feng said humbly, looking at Professor Oak before him. "Feng, what brings you to my lab today?" Professor Oak asked with a friendly look. Feng looked at Professor Oak, who looked kind, and slowly explained his purpose. "Professor Oak, my Pokémon slot is full, and I haven't found a place to store it. I'm wondering if I could temporarily leave it with you. I'll pay for the Pokémon's food myself." Feng looked at Professor Oak seriously, a pleading expression on his face. Professor Oak fell into deep thought after hearing Feng's words, then recalled Feng's character and finally nodded. Seeing Professor Oak agree, Feng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He followed Professor Oak to the teleportation machine and temporarily bound his Pokémon's location to the Oak lab. Then, after seeing everything was complete, Feng took out a friend ball and captured Tajipi. Only Feng's Pokéball was now sealed. After a moment's thought, he decided to leave Bangira at Professor Oak's lab. After all, Bangira's power had reached its limit. What it needed now wasn't travel, but familiarization with its own power and preparation for mastering the aura of the king. After bidding farewell to Professor Oak, Feng slowly left the Oak lab and began to think about his next plan. From his recent conversation with Professor Oak, Feng learned that Satoshi had earned his 8th badge and was heading back to Pallet Town. So, there are still 2 months until the Quartz Conference, Feng muttered to himself, silently calculating the time as he recalled the relevant memories in his mind. Moreover, if Feng remembered correctly, the legendary quest, Mewtwo's counterattack, would begin within these 2 months. Thinking of this, Feng suddenly felt a surge of urgency, and he began to ponder ways to improve his strength. Suddenly, as his thoughts continued to recollect, Feng remembered something relevant. According to the normal plot, Shiba, one of Kanto's 4 heavenly kings, should be training on Mount Maiacha. Gazing towards Mount Maiacha, Feng pondered for a moment, and an idea gradually formed in his mind. He slowly walked towards Mount Maiacha, intending to search for Shiba within the mountain, hoping to gain some guidance from him and understand how to master the heavenly king's aura. Feng threw Charizard's Pokéball, picked up Eevee and Tajipi, and mounted Charizard, slowly flying towards Mount Maiacha. It took Feng about half an hour to reach Mount Maiacha again. The familiar scene before him filled him with emotion. I wonder if Shiba has tamed that giant onyx. Feng gazed at the furrowed ground not far away, recalling the moment he first encountered onyx. Memories welled up in his eyes. Following the traces of the furrows, Feng continued forward. He knew Shiba had come to Mount Maiacha for 2 reasons, training and taming onyx. Therefore, if he could stake out locations where onyx roamed, he'd surely find Shiba. After walking for an unknown amount of time, Feng gradually arrived outside the cave where onyx lay dormant. He used his wave power to conduct a search. But to his disappointment, the presence of the dormant onyx had vanished. Could it be that Shiba has tamed onyx? But where can I find him? Feng let out a wry smile inside. Suddenly, the earth began to shake violently, as if there had been an earthquake. Feng glanced calmly in the direction of the tremors, a thoughtful expression on his face. He and Charizard slowly flew toward the source of the tremors. Soon, with Charizard's help, Feng reached the depths of Mount Maiacha. He gazed upon the scene before him, his face filled with horror. A massive onyx charged relentlessly, and behind it, a shirtless, burly man in white trousers, relentlessly pursued the giant onyx. In a manner that shocked Feng, he attacked the giant onyx. He challenged the giant onyx with his own strength, not using Pokémon. This man was Shiba, one of the 4 heavenly kings of Kanto and a fighting-type Pokémon master. At that moment, Onyx used its digging ability to reach forward, escaping Shiba's pursuit while she wasn't paying attention. Looking at the now vanished giant onyx, a look of loss crossed Ziba's face. Then, as if sensing his gaze, he suddenly raised his head and looked towards Charizard in the sky. Seeing Ziba's presence, Feng landed Charizard near him and slowly approached him. Ziba looked at Feng approaching, a look of confusion on his face. He said in a deep voice, "Friend. Peeping at others is rude. What do you want to talk to me about?" Ziba asked, noticing the hesitation on Feng's face. Feng's face faltered, and he said sheepishly, "Hello, Master Ziba. My name is Feng.
I've come to ask for your advice. I hope you'll grant me your permission." He then bowed towards Ziba, hoping to receive his guidance. After hearing Lu Feng's words, Ziba's face shifted into a thoughtful expression, as if he was thinking about something. After a moment, he seemed to recall something and asked Lu Feng uncertainly, "Are you the Lu Feng who helped A2 and thwarted Team Rocket's plot?" Lu Feng nodded gently at Ziba. Ziba pondered for a moment, then asked, "What do you want my advice on?" Seeing Ziba agree, Lu Feng's face lit up with joy. He immediately released Swampert from his Pokeball and said earnestly, "Master Ziba, please teach me how to help my Pokemon realize the celestial aura." Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, Ziba couldn't help but take a look at Swampert. Seeing that Swampert had indeed reached the peak of the quasi-celestial aura, just one step away from the celestial aura, a look of surprise crossed his face. He hadn't expected that Lu Feng, despite his youth, could have a Pokemon on the verge of breaking through to the celestial aura, and he was filled with shock. After a brief silence, Ziba raised his head, looked at Lu Feng seriously and said, "Come and fight with me. If you want to comprehend the aura of the king, you need to learn through fighting." After hearing Ziba's words, Lu Feng was stunned for a moment. After calming down, he nodded heavily at Ziba. Chapter 118, Kui Quan Lang. I am offended, thank you. Led by Shiba, Lu Feng and Swampert arrived at Mount Maiacha, a suitable location for a battle. Looking across at Lu Feng and Swampert, Shiba pondered for a moment before throwing her Pokeball. A brown, human-like Pokemon, dressed in a skirt-like warrior armor and wearing red boxing gloves, appeared before Lu Feng. It was a fighting-type Pokemon, Flix. Lu Feng stared at Flix, recalling the information he had in his mind, and a strange expression crossed his face. If he remembered correctly, Flix's type of Pokemon only had males, and there were no female Pokemon to pair with. In simple terms, Flix was a perpetual bachelor. Even Super Strength had females, but Flix was only male. It was a bit sad. "Flix, I'm sorry, thank you." As if sensing the affront in Lu Feng's eyes, Kui Quanlang's two red gloves collided, glaring fiercely at Lu Feng. Feeling the pressure coming from Kui Quanlang, Lu Feng quickly paused his thoughts and turned his gaze back to Ziba. Ziba seemed a completely different person. His aura had become extremely heavy, carrying a strong sense of oppression that filled Lu Feng with a sense of oppression, almost suffocating him. Is this the power of Ziba, one of the four heavenly kings? Just his aura makes me feel breathless. Lu Feng, bearing the overwhelming pressure, gazed at Ziba, whose aura was as majestic as a mountain, and was filled with shock. Ziba stared at Lu Feng silently for a long moment, and seeing that he was withstanding the pressure, he nodded. He dissipated his aura, looked at Lu Feng and Swampert, and said, "Next, let my Kui Quanlang test your strength." Upon hearing this, Lu Feng couldn't help but activate a detection skill to obtain information about Kui Quanlang: name, fast punch, gender, male sign, attribute, fighting, ability, iron fist. Using punch-type moves increases their power. Classification, boxing Pokemon, level 73. Qualification, champion. Skills, bullet punch, drain punch, sonic punch, boost punch, fire punch, lightning punch, freeze punch, see-through. Lu Feng couldn't help but gasp at the information before him. Surprise crossed his eyes, and a solemn expression gradually took hold of his face. After slowly calming himself, Lu Feng turned his gaze to his Swampert, meeting its gaze. He could see the tension in Swampert's eyes. After taking a deep breath, he encouraged it, "Swampert, keep going, Swampert." Swampert nodded at Lu Feng, then turned to look at Fast Punch across from him, his gaze gradually becoming resolute. "Since this is a coaching match, you should attack first." Seeing that Lu Feng and Swampert weren't intimidated by the strength of the sprinter, Ziba slowly smiled and spoke to them in a deep voice. After hearing Ziba's words, Lu Feng silently nodded and gave the command to Swampert. Swampert, Water Wave. Swampert, with precise control, immediately activated a Ripple ability, amplifying its own moves. Under Ripple, the Water Wave became even more powerful and terrifying, blasting straight towards the sprinter's position. Ziba observed the state of the sprinter, a look of astonishment on his face, a slight bewilderment. If he remembered correctly, the fierce ability would only be activated when the sprinter was at low health. The strength of this Swampert was a bit unreasonable. During the battle, upon seeing the incoming wave of water and sensing the power within, his expression remained unchanged. Instead, he slowly raised his right fist and unleashed a sonic punch. Charging forward to meet it.
As Lu Feng and Swampert stared in disbelief, Quick Fist launched a powerful punch forward, shattering Swampert's wave of water. He then charged towards Swampert's location. Seeing Quick Fist approaching Swampert, Lu Feng's forehead was covered in sweat. He anxiously called to Swampert, "Swampert, use your burrow skill to evade." Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, Swampert immediately used its burrow skill, retreating underground. Quick Fist leaped to Swampert's previous position, staring at the large hole before him. He remained calm, his expression unchanged, as he waited for Swampert to emerge. Shiba quietly watched the battle unfold before him, offering no orders to Quick Fist Lang, seemingly letting him do whatever he wanted. Lu Feng stared at Quick Fist Lang, his mind racing. Then, through gritted teeth, he addressed Swampert, "Swampert, use hammer." As his voice sank, the ground beneath Quick Fist Lang's feet began to shake violently. The ground gradually cracked, and Swampert leaped out, channeling all its strength into its right arm and hammering towards Quick Fist Lang's position. Quick Fist Lang, sensing the slight movement in the ground, had already turned and leaped to the right, raising his right fist and unleashing a powerful punch, awaiting Swampert's arrival. At that moment, his aura shifted slightly, as if some state had been triggered, suddenly emitting an inexplicable aura of energy. Bang! With a resounding crash, Swampert and Quick Fist Lang's fists collided directly, sending a terrifying wave of battle waves swirling in all directions, stirring up a strong wind that rustled Lu Feng's clothes. A few seconds after the collision, a painful expression appeared on Swampert's face, and its body kept retreating backwards, as if it had sustained considerable damage. Fast Fist Lang glanced at Swampert nonchalantly, his expression not changing at all, with an indescribable casualness. After repelling Swampert, Fast Fist Lang stood there calmly, silently watching Swampert gasping in the distance, without making any further movement. Looking at the battle in front of him, Lu Feng seemed to have grasped something, but a trace of doubt still lingered on his face, and he couldn't help but frown and think. Shiba noticed a change in Lu Feng's expression, knowing that he must have discovered something, and without saying a word, he just waited quietly. Soon after, as if inspired, Lu Feng's eyes shone with light. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Ziba, who was not far away, and asked him, "Master Ziba, I just noticed something about Quick Lang." Lu Feng kept thinking about the recent battle and noticed that when Quick Lang was fighting Swampert, an indescribable characteristic seemed to flash through him, which made Quick Lang's strength suddenly become profound. Ziba listened to Lu Feng's words, looked Lu Feng directly in the eyes, and said to him lightly, "That is the aura of the king you are thinking about." Chapter 119 Understanding the King's Aura. After hearing Hiba's explanation, Lu Feng's body trembled, a look of sudden realization crossing his face. He muttered to himself, "So this is the king's aura." Lu Feng could sense that during the moment Swampert and Corvor clashed, Swampert's strength seemed to have weakened, while Corvor's strength had slightly increased. The so-called king's aura briefly amplified and suppressed a Pokémon. Although Corvor hadn't exerted his full strength, merely maintaining a level comparable to Swampert's, this momentary change sent Swampert reeling. Lu Feng pondered for a moment, concluding that this king's aura might bear some resemblance to the dominant aura of the Ulala region's dominant Pokémon, but it wasn't identical. Thinking of this, Lu Feng looked at Ziba not far away, and said to him with gratitude, "Master Ziba, thank you very much for your guidance. I already have some ideas about the understanding of the king's aura." Ziba listened to Lu Feng's words, looked at him quietly for a long time, then nodded slightly and said, "In this case, the next thing you need to do it yourself." Lu Feng nodded slightly, and then seemed to remember something, and reminded Ziba, "Master Ziba, if you want to subdue the giant onyx, you can go to this location to have a look, maybe there will be unexpected gains." After hearing Lu Feng's reminder, Ziba looked at him in surprise, and then said to Lu Feng, "Thank you for your reminder, I will go and find the giant onyx." Lu Feng shook his head and slowly walked to the front of Swampert. After seeing that it had recovered, he took it to another location, wanting to use the environment in the mountains to let Swampert understand the king's aura. Soon after, Lu Feng brought Swampert to a location near the river in the mountains and slowly set up camp, deciding to conduct their training there. "Swampert, think carefully about your recent battle with Kajirao and absorb the energy of his aura," Lu Feng said to Swampert with a serious expression, his eyes filled with anticipation. Swampert nodded solemnly, growled softly, and began to reflect on the recent battle. Seeing Swampert gaining momentum, Lu Feng began to arrange the day's meals and release to GP and EV. Sun rose and moon set, Time slowly passed, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Through 3 days of contemplation and reflection, as well as battles with the surrounding wild Pokémon, Swampert gradually grasped the key to the king's aura. It growled at Lu Feng, as if to convey something. With the help of Viridian's power, Lu Feng naturally understood Swampert's meaning. He looked at Swampert and nodded silently. Immediately, Lu Feng packed up his bag and, with Swampert and the others, headed back to the spot where they had encountered Sheba 3 days prior. After a careful search, they finally spotted Sheba. Sheba, stunned at Lu Feng's sudden appearance, slowly smiled and said, "Thank you so much for reminding me. I've already captured that giant onyx. Congratulations, Master Sheba. You've achieved your wish." Lu Feng offered heartfelt congratulations, then paused before explaining his purpose. After listening to Lu Feng's words, Sheba rested his chin on his hand, pondered for a moment, nodded, and tossed out his Pokeball. A flash of blazing red light revealed the figure of Frogger. He stared at Swampert before him, a look of surprise on his face. Then, he silently positioned himself opposite Swampert, adopting an attacking stance. Frogger stared directly at Frogger, a powerful fighting spirit radiating from him as he confronted Frogger. Lu Feng watched the scene unfold before him without issuing any orders, letting Swampert fight on its own instincts. He understood that his Pokemon's inability to grasp the king's aura was likely due to lack of intense combat, resulting in a lack of the necessary pressure and resolve. Therefore, Lu Feng decided not to intervene in Swampert's fight this time. Swampert, on the battlefield, Swampert roared and charged towards Swampert. Raising his right arm, he unleashed his hammer attack, striking Swampert. A hint of solemnity crossed Swampert's eyes as he watched the hammer strike towards him. He sensed a subtle change in this attack from Sanshin. With a low groan, he, too, raised his right fist and unleashed his power punch attack on Swampert, meeting Swampert's incoming blow. Two fighting-type moves collided fiercely, a replay of the scene 3 days prior, yet Swampert didn't retreat. As Kui Quanlang watched Swampert frozen alongside him, a unique aura gradually emanated from him, sweeping towards him with a heavy, oppressive force. Swampert's face lit up with excitement as it felt the immense pressure. Despite the pressure, it began to absorb this unique aura. Kui Quanlang, observing the motionless Swampert, a look of surprise crossed his face. He increased the intensity of his aura, sending an even greater force crashing down upon Swampert. Caught within this powerful aura, Swampert was like a lone boat in a turbulent sea. A single moment of carelessness could lead to destruction. Lu Feng, observing the scene before him, a flicker of worry crossed his eyes, but he made no move to stop Swampert. Instead, he clenched his fists and prayed for Swampert. Under this overwhelming pressure, Swampert felt a daze, but he still forcibly endured the force, sensing the changes within. A rudimentary form of this power gradually emerged within him, slowly gathering strength. After an unknown amount of time, the special power within Swampert gradually condensed and formed, enveloping him. In that instant, Swampert realized the power of a king. Although this power was new and far from comparable to that of Keifulang, it gave Swampert the strength to counter it. With this newly emerged power, Swampert withstood the pressure from Keifulang, leveraging its immense strength to push Keifulang back. With only near king-level strength, Keifulang's power was no match for Swampert's. He staggered and took a few steps backward. Lu Feng observed this scene, a look of relief on his face. Chapter 120 The First King Pokémon. On the battlefield, Swampert, drawing on his newly realized Heavenly King aura, attacked Quick Fist Lang. Seeing Swampert's successful realization, Quick Fist Lang no longer held back, unleashing his full might. After a few rounds, he crushed Swampert. Seeing this, Lu Feng shook his head slightly and slowly walked towards Swampert's position. He retrieved the appropriate medicine and helped Swampert heal his wounds. Swampert, congratulations. Lu Feng felt the changes in Swampert, a hint of a smile playing on his face. Swampert's eyes lit up with excitement upon hearing Lu Feng's words, his frozen face instantly transforming into a sullen expression. With Swampert's realization of the Heavenly King aura, powered by the long-accumulated power within him, he broke through to the Heavenly King level, his aura steadily rising. Seeing this sudden change, Lu Feng stood there in a daze. Recalling Swampert's experience, a look of understanding suddenly dawned on him. You have to know that Swampert has absorbed some of the energy of Kyger's origin sea. If it weren't for the limitations of the King's aura, its strength would have long since broken through to the King level. Thinking of this reason,
The heavy stone in Lu Feng's heart gradually fell, and he watched Swampert's changes with great anticipation. After a while, Swampert's aura finally stabilized. With the help of the energy in its body, its level climbed from level 59 to level 64, directly entering the middle stage of the king. Looking at the changes in Swampert, the expressions of Lu Feng and Sheba began to change. However, Lu Feng's face was full of PWQ, while Sheba's expression turned into Cyrillic letter D. A moment later, Lu Feng retracted Swampert and, looking at Sheba not far away, sincerely thanked him. Master Sheba, thank you so much for this. Hearing this, Sheba nodded slightly and said, it's just a small favor. I'll look forward to your future growth and the day we can have a full team battle. Hearing Sheba's invitation to a battle, Lu Feng's face lit up, and he solemnly said to him, I will definitely not let you down. Then, Lu Feng said goodbye to Sheba and quietly left Myaochen Mountain. He rode Charizard and slowly flew towards Viridian City. 2 hours later, Lu Feng emerged from the Pokémon Center in Viridian City. Just as he was about to leave the Pokémon Center, he heard a familiar voice behind him that immediately caught his attention. Lu Feng slowly turned around and looked at the group of people not far away. A look of surprise crossed his face. He said to them, Zaya Ozzy, why are you here? Zaya Gang, Zaya Aksha, and Pikachu, long time no see. Lu Feng then continued to greet Zaya Gang and the others. Pikachu whispered to Lu Feng, waving from Zaya Ozzy's shoulder. Zaya Gang and Zaya Aksha smiled back at him after hearing Lu Feng's words. Zaya Ozzy, upon hearing Lu Feng's question, remembered that he had just received his 8th gym badge and excitedly said to Lu Feng, I already have 8 gym badges. Look, as he spoke, he opened his coat, revealing 8 gym badges neatly arranged. Looking at the excited Zaya Ozzy, Lu Feng smiled faintly and said to him calmly, Congratulations, Zaya Ozzy. Lu Feng, let's fight. I want to show you how much Pikachu and I have improved over time. Zaya Ozzy looked at Lu Feng with a burning gaze. He hadn't forgotten their last battle and quickly invited him to a new one. Zaya Gang and Zaya Aksha looked at Zaya Ozzy, who was obsessed with the battle. With a look of here we go again, they looked at each other and sighed. After listening to Zaya Ozzy's words, Lu Feng thought for a moment, shook his head and said, let's wait until the Quartz Conference. Then I can see your and Pikachu's progress. Zaya Ozzy, Zaya Gang and the others were shocked by Lu Feng's words, but when they thought about Lu Feng's strength, they felt relieved. At that moment, Tajipi, curled up into a Pokemon egg, awoke and poked its head out of Lu Feng's backpack. Looking at Ash and the others around them, it uttered a puzzled Chachi-boo. Everyone, upon hearing Tajipi's voice, looked towards it, their faces touched by its adorable appearance. Lu Feng slowly lifted Tajipi into his arms, carefully supporting its body. Hey, is that Tajipi? So cute. Misty looked at the Tajipi in Lu Feng's arms, a flicker of excitement crossing her face, as if captivated by its adorable appearance. Hearing Misty's words, and remembering the Tajipi's original owner, Lu Feng's expression flitted with a flicker of awkwardness. He glanced at Misty with a hint of embarrassment before nodding. As everyone chatted, a dark figure appeared in the distant sky, speeding towards them at breakneck speed. Suddenly, Lu Feng jerked his head up, his gaze fixed solemnly at the sky. Through his wave guide, he sensed a powerful presence rapidly approaching their position. Xiao and the others, noticing Lu Feng's unusual behavior, looked puzzled, somewhat bewildered. But when they looked up and followed Lu Feng's gaze, they were stunned by the sight of a dark figure in the sky. Its speed was terrifying. In a matter of seconds, it had reached Lu Feng and the others' position. As they watched, the shadow descended. A fierce gust of wind blew, sending flying sand billowing around them, obscuring their view. A moment later, when the hurricane subsided, the wind and sand subsided, and everything returned to calm, Lu Feng and the others slowly turned toward the sudden appearance, their faces wary. A large, honest-looking figure, carrying a messenger bag, stood before them. Dragonite, Zaya Ozzy couldn't help but exclaimed as he looked at the figure in front of him. Looking at the uninvited Dragonite in front of him, who was dressed in a somewhat eccentric way, Lu Feng's face showed a thoughtful expression. If he guessed correctly, the Dragonite in front of him, who looked like a postman, should be the messenger sent by Mewtwo. The purpose was to invite some strong trainers to go to the new island and participate in the trainer party held by Mewtwo. Sure enough, the next action of this Dragonite directly confirmed Lu Feng's idea. It pointed at its backpack, then at Lu Feng and Zaya Ozzy, and smiled gently at everyone.
Chapter 121 The Invitation from the Strongest Pokémon Trainer. What does this mean? Ozzy looked at Dragonite's actions, somewhat confused, and couldn't help but ask it. After hearing Ozzy's words, Dragonite took out a stack of letters from its bag, carefully compared the appearance of Feng and Ozzy, and fumbled through the stack of letters for a long time. After a few seconds, it found the letter to be given to Feng and Ozzy, and handed it over directly. Looking at the letter handed over by Dragonite, Ozzy seemed to have crashed, and did not move for a long time. It was Feng who helped him get the letter back. After seeing Feng and Ozzy accept the letter, Dragonite was about to flap its wings and head towards the next destination, but was stopped by Feng. Dragonite scratched his head in confusion, looking at Feng with a simple expression, not knowing why he stopped him. Feng pulled some energy cubes from his backpack and handed them to Dragonite, saying, "Thank you for your hard work." Dragonite sniffed the cubes in Feng's hand, taking in the refreshing aroma. It then tossed some into its mouth and expressed its gratitude. Before anyone could react, a fierce hurricane swirled up again, charging high into the sky and vanishing before their very eyes. It truly comes and goes like the wind, leaving no cloud behind, Feng couldn't help but exclaim as he watched Dragonite vanish into the sky. After a few minutes, Ozzy and the others gradually recovered from their shock. A hoarse voice asked, "Could that Dragonite have come here just to deliver a letter?" Feng watched as everyone gradually came to their senses, nodded slowly, and handed the letter to Ozzy. When Brock and Misty saw Feng nod, their faces filled with shock. They couldn't help but exclaim, "Who could be so extravagant as to use a rare Pokemon like Dragonite to deliver a letter?" Feng listened to their exclamations and said meaningfully, "Who knows? Maybe it wasn't a human." Everyone thought nothing of Feng's answer, thinking he was joking. Then, Ash slowly opened the letter in his hand. Inside was a single object resembling a magnetic disc. Nothing else. The disc resembled a compacted battle arena, rectangular in shape, with a large Pokeball logo in the center, giving it a technological feel. "What is this?" Ash looked at the disc in his hand, his face filled with bewilderment. Dragonite was used as a messenger just to deliver this. Brock and Misty stared at the disc in Ash's hand, their faces filled with disbelief, their hearts filled with an indescribable feeling. Feng looked at the bewildered Satoshi and his companions, shook his head slightly, opened his letter, removed the disc, and pressed the Pokeball logo in the center. A virtual image shone from the Pokeball logo, appearing before everyone. Satoshi and the others were amazed by this technologically advanced virtual image, their faces filled with curiosity. Feng, having been mentally prepared, remained calm. The virtual image revealed a sweet, incredibly beautiful girl. She looked young, dressed in a maid's outfit, giving her a somewhat mature air. Brock's eyes widened as he stared at the girl's image, his breathing quickening as he muttered, "I feel like I'm in love again." This beautiful lady, Satoshi and Misty, standing nearby, heard Brock's words, their eyes twitching. A look of resignation crossed their faces, and they sighed at Feng. "Strange. Why do I feel like this beautiful lady looks familiar?" Xiaogang suddenly felt a sense of déjà vu as he looked at the virtual image of the girl before him, and said to Feng and others nearby. After Xiaogang finished speaking, Ozzy and Xiaoxia thought he was just having an old problem and ignored his doubts. Only Feng couldn't help but roll his eyes, looking at Xiaogang with a dark look, his heart full of complaints. "Of course you're familiar with her. Isn't this the Miss Joy you've always longed for?" At this moment, accompanied by the appearance of the virtual image, the disc suddenly rang with a silver bell-like sound, reaching everyone's ears. "Please forgive my intrusive letter. I hope you'll forgive me. My master, as the strongest Pokemon trainer, greatly admires your abilities and would like to invite you to the strongest Pokemon trainer party. The venue is the Pokemon City on the new island. I hope you will all attend." After Miss Joy's voice faded, the image reflected on the disc changed, transforming into a miniature map that appeared before everyone. The map showed the route from the Kanto region to the new island, explaining how to get there. After playing all the information it had set, the disc slowly returned to its original state and lay quietly in Feng's hands. After seeing the information on Feng's disc, Ozzy also played his own disc, but the information was largely the same. The strongest Pokemon trainers party, that's quite a boast, Xiaoxia asked the others, a hesitant look on her face. "Should we go to this party? Maybe he's the strongest Pokemon trainer?" After all, The aura emanating from Dragonite just now couldn't be lower than that of a king. Brock, after hearing Misty's words, carefully analyzed them, his chin resting on his hand. And with such a beautiful lady inviting us, how could we not go? After hearing their words, Ash looked at Lu Feng and asked, Lu Feng, you've got an invitation too. Are you going to this party? Lu Feng nodded and said to the three of them, there's still some time before the quartz conference starts, and since we're free now, why not go? Okay, let's meet the strongest Pokemon trainer. He even has some admiration for me. After hearing Lu Feng's words, Ash thought it made sense and decided to attend the party. After checking the information on the invitation, they learned that only Old Coast Pier had a ferry to New Island, so they decided to head to Old Coast Pier. Chapter 122: A Sudden Storm. The next day, after breakfast, Lu Feng and the others purchased tickets for the Old Coast Pier. They boarded a special bus and slowly made their way towards the city where the Old Coast Pier was located. Taking advantage of this rare opportunity, Lu Feng opened the system's task panel and began browsing the relevant task information. Legendary quest, Mewtwo's counterattack, time limit, arrive at a new island before Mewtwo's party begins. Quest description, as the most powerful artificial Pokemon, Mewtwo has become extremely distrustful of humans due to Team Rocket's exploitation. To prove its superiority, it is hosting a party and inviting all trainers to attend. Please change Mewtwo's perception of humans. Quest reward, Mewtwo's special favor, earn Mewtwo's help, 3 golden crowns, 1 legendary resource, plus 5% world integration. Penalty for failure, all Pokemon are taken away by Mewtwo. After reading the task description, Lu Feng took a deep breath, cast his gaze upon his own shadow, and retrieved the dragon scale left by the giant Dragonite from his backpack. A sense of relief gradually settled in. Then, Lu Feng seemed to remember something and silently opened the player forum. At this moment, the entire Blue Star player forum seemed to have exploded, with countless messages refreshing rapidly, like surging seawater, endless. Oh my god, I suddenly received an invitation to an epic quest, the strongest Pokemon trainer. Are there any friends who want to go with me? The one above, have you received a related quest as well? I thought I was the only one who got this quest. By the way, the 2 big guys above, how did you receive the epic quest? I don't mean anything else, it's mainly because a friend of mine wanted me to ask. As long as you collect 8 badges, Dragonite will come to deliver the invitation to you. They actually use Dragonite as a messenger, which is amazing. Shock. There are actually big guys who have collected 8 badges. The newbie wants to know how you defeated the Golden Gym? I was turned into a ragdoll by the gym leader and stayed here for more than a week. No way? No way? There are really people who are so stubborn as to challenge the top 8 gyms. I always challenge those relatively smaller gyms to get badges. After browsing the relevant information, Lu Feng's face gradually became heavy, and the whole person was silent. He discovered that any player who earned 8 badges, regardless of whether the gym they challenged was one of Kanto's 8 strongest, would receive an invitation from Mewtwo. However, the quests they received weren't legendary, but epic, which was a relief for Lu Feng. Time passed slowly, and after more than 10 hours of driving, Lu Feng and his companions finally arrived at the city where the Old Coast Pier was located. Arriving at the Pokemon Center near the pier, Lu Feng and his companions looked at each other in surprise at the numerous trainers gathered. After some discussion, they realized that all the trainers in front of them had received invitations to attend the party on New Island. Looking at the sea of people, Lu Feng couldn't help but feel a headache. He carefully counted the number of people in the Pokemon Center, and found that there were approximately 1,000 people. Isn't that outrageous? So many trainers invited at once. Ozzy and his companions exclaimed in amazement at the number Lu Feng announced, stunned by the number of attendees. They had never imagined the organizers would be so generous and bold as to invite so many trainers. I expect more. You know, it's not even departure time yet, so there should be quite a few more trainers coming, Lu Feng said, shaking his head after hearing the exclamations of Ozzy and the others, a pessimistic look in his eyes. With the boarding time listed on the invitation still several hours away, no one knew how many trainers would arrive. With the influx of players, the number of trainers attending the party would likely far exceed the current number. Boom! A flash of lightning flashed outside the Pokemon Center, and a resounding thunderclap crackled quietly in everyone's ears. In an instant, the weather outside the Pokemon Center changed dramatically. Dark clouds gradually enveloped the city, fierce winds blew from the coast, and torrential rain instantly fell to the ground. A powerful storm had formed. Gazing at the downpour outside the Pokémon Center, Ozzy and the others expressed relief, saying with some emotion, "Lucky we arrived early, otherwise we'd be soaked to the skin. Will this heavy rain affect the tour?" Suddenly, the thoughtful Zaya gang, looking at the downpour, seemed to remember something and couldn't help but speak to the crowd. "This downpour won't stop anytime soon. I don't think the ferry at this pier will depart." Feng, gazing at the downpour outside, his eyes gradually deepened as he replied quietly. He knew that this sudden downpour wasn't a natural occurrence, but rather a result of Mewtwo's powerful psychic powers altering the weather near the new island, a test for the invited trainers. Because of the torrential downpour, no ship near the pier would venture out to the new island in such a severe storm. Therefore, the invited Pokémon trainers would have to rely on their own strength to reach the new island. "So how do we get to the new island?" "The party starts in just a few hours." Misty frowned at Feng's words and addressed the group. "To reach the new island, we'll have to rely on our own strength. Perhaps this will be a test for us," Feng said meaningfully, gazing at the torrential rain. "On our own, Feng, have you come up with any plans?" Ash, his face filled with confusion, couldn't help but ask. "If the storm doesn't stop, I plan to ride my Swampert and slowly search for the new island," Feng said in a deep voice, a look of determination on his face. Brock's face was filled with worry after hearing Feng's answer, and he hesitated. "Isn't that too dangerous? Even a ferry would crash in a storm this severe, let alone a Pokémon on board." After hearing Brock's words, Feng didn't respond, but instead fell silent. After a long pause, Feng slowly replied, "Let's rest for a while. Perhaps the storm will stop soon." Zhi and the others listened to Feng's words with forced expressions on their faces. They all knew that such heavy rain wouldn't end so soon, but they couldn't say anything. From then on, everyone stared at the downpour outside, each with their own thoughts. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123: A sister who rides the wind and waves, and a brother who cuts through thorns and brambles. Time ticked by, and boarding time approached. But the torrential rain outside showed no sign of letting up. Observing the marble-sized raindrops before them, the trainers at the Pokémon Center fell silent. After a long moment, one trainer, unknown, took the lead, but the rest silently followed suit. Donning their various rain gear, they braved the fierce wind and pounding rain, slowly making their way towards the dock. A procession of over 1,000 people advanced steadily towards the dock, like a long, crawling dragon. The scene was quite spectacular. Feng and the others followed suit, continuing their journey towards the dock. They hoped to see if there was a ferry that could take them to the new island. But to their dismay, all the ferries at the dock were grounded. The trainers, who had come from far away, were stunned by the staff's warning, their faces filled with disbelief. The dock manager, Boyka, looked at the crowd before her, apologetically saying, "I'm so sorry, everyone, because the storm hasn't stopped yet. For your safety, all ferries are suspended today. We've come all this way just to attend that party, and you're telling us the ferries are suspended." A beautiful female trainer, listening to Boyka's words, her face filled with resentment and questioning. The surrounding trainers, watching Boyka before them, were also seething with excitement, adding to the already bustling pier's chaos. "Everyone, please be quiet. We're doing this for your safety. Please carefully consider the pros and cons." Miss Junsha, the city's leader, observed the somewhat chaotic crowd, constantly trying to calm the crowd and dissuade the trainers from going out to sea. Unfortunately, Miss Junsha underestimated the trainers' determination and was unable to quench their passion. Unnoticed, a dozen or so trainers unleashed their Pokémon. Using their power, they leaped from the docks and, braving the raging storm, advanced towards the new island. Some leaped from the sky, others swam across the sea, like warriors ready to face death. The other trainers, watching the fading figures, followed their example, advancing towards the new island. Watching this scene, Miss Junsha and Boyji's expressions changed. They tried to chase after the trainers, to stop them, but to no avail. In the end, they could only pray silently for their safety. These are Pokémon trainers. A group of fearless adventurers. Feng observed the scene before him, sighing softly, his tone slightly uneasy. "Should we still go?" Brock asked hesitantly, his brow furrowed. "Of course. Don't you think it's cool?" Ash gazed at the distant scene, his blood boiling with excitement, as if he'd been infected by the crowd of trainers. Lu Feng listened to Ash's words, a flicker of a smile on his face, and he softly said, "Go over there." Brock and Misty exchanged a glance, sighed silently, and said, "I really can't do anything about you, Pikachu," Pikachu said firmly, gazing at the storm ahead. Seeing that everyone had decided to set out, Lu Feng headed towards the ferry. Ash and the others followed him, their faces lit with anticipation. Once they reached the ferry, sensing the power of the storm, some trainers showed hesitation, some stunned and at a loss. Lu Feng glanced at the group and shook his head slightly. Just as he was about to send out his Swampert, he saw the true protagonists, the trio, approaching on a leprous-like boat. After a brief discussion, Lu Feng and his companions boarded Team Rocket's boat and headed for the new island. The sea surged, surging with raging waves, bearing the weight of destruction. The storm made the journey even more treacherous. As they advanced, the waves grew larger and larger. Under the fierce pounding, they struggled to steer the boat, steadily advancing toward the new island. Glancing at the roaring waves and the occasional roar of thunder, Lu Feng rested his chin, a quizzical expression on his face. "Lu Feng, what are you thinking about? Come and help control the boat," Xiaoxia said, catching Lu Feng's gaze. "Do you think we're like a sister braving the wind and waves, and a brother overcoming all obstacles?" Hearing Xiaoxia's call, Lu Feng slowly came to his senses, muttered a self-deprecating question, and then struggled to control the boat. After hearing Lu Feng's words, everyone's faces flashed with bewilderment, but as they took in the surrounding scene, a wry smile forced itself across their faces. After a long moment, Lu Feng and his crew's boat gradually approached the new island. "What's that?" Xiaoxia suddenly exclaimed, looking at something not far away, a hint of shock still lingering on her face. Everyone, upon hearing Xiaoxia's cry, gazed in the direction she pointed, their bodies tensing. Across their path, a mass of pitch-black clouds descended, seemingly from the sky, forming a vast curtain that blocked their path. From time to time, arcs of silver and flashes of golden lightning danced through the clouds, revealing a powerful, oppressive presence before them. At that moment, beneath the veil of darkness, the sky and the sea seemed to merge. Everyone stared at the scene in amazement, their faces filled with uncertainty, a sense of unease and confusion. Lu Feng glanced at the disk map in his hand and realized that the dark cloud was the new island. He said to the others, "The new island is behind this dark cloud. We just need to pass through it and we'll reach our destination." Xiaoxia and the others, watching the flashes of lightning before them, were speechless for a long time. After a long while, Xiaogang finally broke the deadlock, saying with a somewhat uneasy expression, "But how are we supposed to get through? These lightning bolts all around us don't look that simple." Lu Feng glanced at the dark cloud ahead. From his memory, he knew that the scene before him was just an illusion created by Mutuo's psychic powers. He said directly to the rocket trio, "Just charge." The rocket trio's pupils dilated at Lu Feng's words, and they said in disbelief, "Hey, little brats, if you're looking for death, don't involve us." Xiaozi and the others were also shocked by Lu Feng's words, but when they saw the rocket team exposed, their attention unconsciously shifted. Looking at the crowd in front of him, Lu Feng sighed, threw Swampert's Pokeball, and said to Swampert, "Swampert, please push this boat into the dark cloud." Swampert heard the words and began to use all his strength to push the boat towards the location of the dark cloud. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but panic, and gradually became a little frightened. Chapter 124 The Strongest Pokemon Trainer, Mutuo. As the boat drew closer, the three members of Team Rocket clung to each other, wailing loudly about their doom. Ash, the other two, and Pikachu clung to each other tightly, gazing at the approaching dark cloud, the dancing and hissing arcs of electricity. They swallowed hard, their faces filled with intense anxiety. Only Lu Feng observed the scene with some composure, quietly awaiting the moment of contact on the boat. Soon, the boat plunged into the dark cloud, but the destruction Team Rocket had imagined didn't happen. Instead, the cloud itself parted, creating a path wide enough for the boat to pass. Behind the dark cloud, the sun shone brightly, the wind was gentle, and everything was incredibly peaceful, bringing a sense of clarity. Compared to the outside, it felt like two completely different worlds. "How could this be possible?" Ash said, his mouth wide open, rubbing his eyes vigorously, a dazed expression as if he had witnessed something unbelievable. The others, watching the scene before them, fell silent, as if deeply shocked. Lu Feng casually surveyed the surroundings and said calmly, "Don't you think the violent storm along the way was a complete coincidence?" As they listened to Lu Feng's words and recalled their experiences along the way, they gradually began to grasp a clue. Xiaoxi's face lit up with irritation, and she couldn't help but ask, "Are you saying this is man-made?" "That's too dangerous," Lu Feng scoffed, his voice deep. "No, can you explain what's happening? Besides, don't you think the number of invited trainers is a bit too high? Without some sort of screening process, wouldn't this party for the strongest Pokémon trainers be unworthy of its name?" As Lu Feng finished speaking, his words were like a thunderclap, quietly exploding in the hearts of everyone, shocking them all. Xiaoxi and the others wanted to say something, but the words on their lips froze. After a long moment, Brock murmured, "What kind of being could control such a massive celestial phenomenon?" Brock's question echoed those of Satoshi and the others, but Lu Feng offered no answers. Instead, he stared at the new island ahead, his eyes profound. A moment later, they finally reached their final destination, the new island mentioned in the invitation. A vast island gradually came into view. Near the shore, a classical castle stood majestically. Warm sunlight filtered through the windmills atop it, quietly casting its shadows in the breeze, like a scene from a fairy tale, brought directly into reality. Gazing at the somewhat aesthetically pleasing castle from afar, Lu Feng clenched his fists, his heart filled with anxiety. He knew that once they reached the island, they would face Mewtwo, known as the most powerful artificial Pokémon. As the boat approached, everyone surveyed the surroundings, their emotions mixed. Since there were no large ferry ports around the island, arranging a ferry to bring the trainers there was absurd. The thought of this filled everyone's hearts with mixed feelings, and they felt a tinge of distrust towards the host of the party and the invitations. Just then, a voice like a silver bell rang out, instantly capturing everyone's attention. "Welcome everyone. Please show us your invitations." Miss Joy's graceful figure appeared, treading gracefully like golden lotus steps as she walked towards the group. Lu Feng and Xiaoxi exchanged a glance, then quickly produced their invitations and handed them to Miss Joy. After verifying the authenticity of the invitation, Miss Joy nodded gently and prepared to lead Xiaoxi, Lu Feng, and the others into the ancient castle. Rocket's trio, having disembarked, disappeared without a trace, disappearing somewhere unknown. But before Miss Joy could make a move, Brock stared at her and suddenly remembered something. He quickly stepped forward, took her hand, and said, "It's you, so I'm not mistaken, you're the Miss Joy who disappeared at the docks." "What?" Ash and Misty blurted out in shock at Brock's words. Lu Feng watched the scene quietly, observing everyone's reactions with a cold eye. But when he saw Brock, he couldn't help but stare a few times longer. He was curious how Brock could tell Miss Joy from Miss Junsa. You know, Joy and Junsa look exactly the same across the Pokémon world, as if they were replicas. Some even jokingly called Miss Joy and Miss Junsa special Pokémon. After pondering for a long time, Lu Feng still couldn't figure it out, and could only blame it on Brock's LSP attribute. He could only sigh, how terrifying. After hearing Xiaogang's words, Miss Joy stared at them with a glazed look in her eyes. She denied it directly and led them into the castle's interior. As they entered, they arrived at a magnificent hall. The castle gates opened automatically, and Miss Joy instructed them to take their seats according to the invitations before leaving. By then, the hall was filled with numerous trainers, whispering among themselves, awaiting Mewtwo's arrival. Lu Feng surveyed the hall, spotting trainers native to the Pokémon world and those from Blue Planet. From a distance, he nodded to Wu Feng, Ran Qiangsha, and the others, offering a subtle gesture before retiring to a seat and awaiting the party's start. Xiaoxi and the others, like in the original story, were engaging in conversation with three rather powerful trainers. Just then, the lights in the hall dimmed, and Miss Joy entered, standing before a spiral staircase shimmering with a faint glow, waiting silently. A few minutes later, Mewtwo slowly emerged from the spiral staircase, descending before the crowd, powered by psychic powers. "This is my master, the most powerful Pokémon trainer and the strongest Pokémon in history, Mewtwo-sama," Miss Joy's voice chimed in, introducing Mewtwo to the crowd. Upon hearing Miss Joy's words, all the trainers in the hall erupted in anger, shouting, "Are you kidding us? How can a Pokémon be a trainer? That's impossible. I won't stand for you." As the trainers finished their words, They attempted to leave the castle when a surge of psychic power seized them, causing them to fall into the pool. By the time the trainers had reacted and commanded the Pokémon to fight back, they were instantly incapacitated by Mewtwo's powerful psychic attack. For a moment, the entire hall fell into deathly silence, everyone watching the scene in utter silence. Chapter 125, Challenge from Mewtwo. Inside the castle, the lights flickered, darkening the scene even further. Everyone was stunned as they stared at Mewtwo, a silver-white creature with purple eyes, tail, and abdomen, its fingers composed of 3 spherical shapes, resembling a combination of human and feline. They hadn't expected Mewtwo to be so powerful. In a matter of seconds, it effortlessly defeated those powerful and imposing Pokémon. Then, just like the original storyline, Mewtwo dispersed Miss Joy's psychic powers. After losing control of her powers, Miss Joy slowly regained consciousness. She gazed around in confusion, her brows furrowed slightly, a look of astonishment on her face, unsure of what had happened. "Why did you do this?" Upon hearing Miss Joy's story, Satoshi and the others angrily stared at Mewtwo, questioning him. Looking at the enraged Ash and the others, Mewtwo remained somewhat calm and spoke slowly. "I once dreamed of living alongside humans, but they ultimately disappointed me. Humans lack immense power, and they can't control their desires. If we allow lowly, weak creatures like you to rule the world, it will sooner or later be destroyed by human desires." Mewtwo's eyes gradually grew colder as he reminisced about his time with Team Rocket. "If humans can't rule the world, do you think Pokémon can?" A trainer, upon hearing Mewtwo's words, couldn't help but question it. Mewtwo looked in the direction of the voice and replied calmly, "No, Pokémon can't do that either. This world has always been dominated by humans, and Pokémon controlled by humans are no match for it. No. Mewtwo, you're wrong." At this moment, Feng slowly approached it, raised his head, looked directly at Mewtwo, and spoke firmly. "In this world, humans don't control Pokémon, nor do Pokémon control humans. Instead, the two depend on each other, working hand in hand and living together." Feng raised his Pokéball, looked at it tenderly, and said softly, "Only those recognized by Pokémon are true Pokémon trainers. Those who seek to forcibly control Pokémon are doomed to fail." At Feng's words, the Pokéballs on his body swayed slightly, as if in response. In the shadows behind him, Machado looked at Feng, who stood upright, a hint of recognition in his orange-red eyes. As he spoke, the trainers present nodded and silently walked behind Feng, as if to confirm his statement. The trainers' Pokémon also followed closely, looking at Mewtwo with incredibly calm expressions. Gazing at the composed Feng before him, sensing a faint familiarity emanating from him, Mewtwo suddenly recalled an incident from a month ago. With a complex expression, he said, "It's you," but its expression didn't last long. Upon hearing Feng's words, its pupils constricted, and a look of anger crossed its face. Recalling its experiences since birth, it said with some resignation, "It's a mistake for Pokémon to coexist with humans. Human greed will lead Pokémon into darkness." Feng listened, recalling their journey, and said in a deep voice, "I don't deny the darkness you speak of, but please give humans a chance and try to see the beauty that humans and Pokémon can create together." Seeing that Feng was unable to convince Mewtwo, his supernatural powers erupted, spreading towards the numerous trainers, attempting to subjugate them with his immense strength. Thus, endorsing his own beliefs. A powerful psychic power spread throughout the castle. Like a heavy rock bearing down on everyone, making them feel breathless and overwhelmed. Seeing Ash and the others oppressed by Mewtwo's psychic power, the trainers' Pokémon attacked Mewtwo, attempting to free them. Pikachu glared at Mewtwo, expressing his thoughts. To Pikachu, Ash and the others were his family, his close companions on this journey together. Mewtwo, observing the struggling crowd, listened to Pikachu's words and said in a cold voice, "HMPH. I only see humans exploiting Pokémon, using them as tools to satisfy their own desires. Humans are hopeless. It seems there's no point in trying to reason with Pokémon like you, controlled by humans. I originally thought I'd save you from their clutches, but it seems I was wrong." Mewtwo looked at Pikachu and the other Pokémon and shook his head in disappointment, unwilling to waste any more words with him. At this moment, a trainer from the original story stepped forward, sending his Pokémon to attack Mewtwo, hoping to capture it and break the current situation. However, Mewtwo's counterattack immediately incapacitated the trainer's Pokémon. Everyone watched the scene with a grim expression, their eyes filled with panic and a sense of unease.
Wu Feng and Ran Qiangsha seized the opportunity to approach Lu Feng, wanting to ask him about the next steps. Lu Feng shook his head, urging them to wait and see. After hearing Lu Feng's words, the two, watching the situation deteriorate, could only sigh in disappointment and silently follow Lu Feng. Unnoticed, in a corner of the castle, Ito used his communicator to send a brief message, a hint of joy on his face. Suddenly, Mewtwo's psychic powers intensified. It seemed a female trainer had mentioned Mew, triggering a taboo within Mewtwo, intensifying its attacks. Numerous Pokémon attacked Mewtwo. Resisting the pressure, Mewtwo felt lost as he watched the multitude of Pokémon before him. After a moment's reflection, Mewtwo addressed the crowd, saying, "Don't you all claim to be powerful Pokémon trainers? Now, I'll give you a chance to prove yourself. Defeat the Pokémon under my command, and you can leave." Upon hearing Mewtwo's offer, the trainers' faces lit up with excitement, accepting Mewtwo's challenge. The entire castle hall began to shake violently, and the ceiling slowly opened to the sides, transforming the hall into a standard battle arena. The battle was about to begin. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.